Okay, so I don't want to freak you guys out, but I have some terrible news.
What's that?
Well, okay, I just got this update in this Facebook group called Marvel Fans Forever. Looks like Phase 5 of this Marvel Cinematic Universe is about to deal with some release delays. As of now, the only two fixed dates for the theatrical releases are Guardians of the Galaxy 3 on May 5th and The Marvels on November 10th. They're pushing back Secret Invasion. They're pushing back Daredevil Born Again, Agatha the Coven of Chaos, Ironheart, Loki Season 2, Echo, What If Season 2, X-Men 97, Spider-Man Freshman Year, and that's it. I really thought there'd be more than that.
I've heard of one of those.
What will I watch?
I don't know. What the fuck are we gonna do?
Well, you know what? I watched the first season of, for the first time ever in my life this week, is a little show called The Sopranos.
Oh, you watched the whole first season?
I watched the whole first season this week.
How'd that go?
That's a pretty good show. I can see why people like that. But you know what tripped me out is because like I started the show, and when I started the show, in my head, that show began about 2005 and wrapped up around 2012. And I looked up and it's like I didn't realize 1999.
Yeah.
Wait, really? And because that's the thing is because I saw all those payphones and I'm like, oh, those don't exist anymore. You can't just go to any corner and find a payphone. Whole scene centered around buying a newspaper. That doesn't happen.
I love that show so much. I can just sit and watch little 2-minute pieces of it for forever.
There's been a lot of things that it's brought up, because one thing I liked is there's one.
The mom and I'm sure you will identify with the mom in that.
So. Oh yeah, no, but the thing that one of the episodes I thought it was so funny because it just entirely reinforces my conclusion about therapy and religion because there's a scene where it's juxtaposing him talking to the therapist with the wife talking to the priest. It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Check this out. I got this thing for Charlie. It's like a puzzle. Maybe this will keep him entertained for a minute. There's a bunch of food in it. See how long it takes.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Figured out. We'll see how long that takes him to figure out. Leave me alone. So that whole first season, it is unfortunate because the actress died. And there's a couple scenes in it that are real bad early era CGI stuff. If you get to that stuff, but
that's one thing I've noticed is that was an HBO TV show at the height when HBO was the height of television production at that time. And there's a few glitches. There's some
not at
bad
the height.
Camera work.
They predated it. They were the kind of ones that launched it all. And
I
remember when it was first starting, the bad camera work was going. I had half of my brain am I watching a documentary or a real thing? I didn't know what was going on. And then I realized it was a show. In the first episode when they started beating somebody up, I realized it was a show. But somewhere in that first episode, especially in that time frame, you were so not used to that type of filming. I was like, is this real or a documentary? What's going on?
Single camera shots. Everything is single camera.
I freaking love that show.
I remember Malcolm in the Middle being the first comedy to do that.
Like multicam or a single cam stuff.
A single camera comedy.
Without laugh track type deal.
Oh yeah.
Were they the first ones? Because
I remember reading that before.
The Office. And that's
The Office.
True. Yeah, it was way before The Office. But
really?
People give credit to The Office, even though Malcolm in the Middle was way before The Office.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe because they called The Office prime time or something like that. I don't know. Speaking of NBC sitcoms and stuff, I read Matthew Perry's entire book this week, and guess what that was? Back in the 90s, I was on a very famous TV show. I watched that whole I listened to that whole thing, and even the end of it, I'm like, this is BoJack Horseman, and he didn't learn anything, and he's that same person, and he is gonna keep being that same person until. I mean, that was one of the most nihilistic shows ever. If you got all the way through it, because BoJack Horseman.
BoJack was pretty great.
Yeah, and I don't think Matthew Perry's story is any different than that at all. At all. He's just addiction and women, and every time he learns, he falls back into addiction. Every time, and then his most recent fall off, I think, was after the book even came out or something like that. And you just listen to the whole thing, and you're like, I swear, it's that TV show. 100%.
BoJack Horseman was one of those wild experiences for me because we were visiting my wife's family in St. Louis, and I went and hung out with one of the guys I liked there, and we were just watching stupid shit. Like we watched all three, what are the Left Behind movies by Kirk? What's his face? But then later, like the next day, I was hanging out with him, and we're like, "Let's watch this stupid horse show. That looks dumb." We watched the first episode. We're like, "Well, this is really funny." Second episode, yeah, this is still really funny. And then, like, you get further in, you're like, "Oh my god, I care about this stupid fucking horse."
That show had a lot of great things, but one of my favorite little moments, because like it was so nihilistic and it's all about depression and all that shit. But I love like when the people are the animals that they are. My favorite thing is that they do an establishing shot, in the morning, and there's Rooster Man on his morning jog just going, "It's morning!"
There's a lot of good little jokes like that throughout the series. I really like that. That's one of the better series to get through.
One of the first jokes you see is an establishing shot in a supermarket, and there's like an anthropomorphic poodle talking to her friend. She's like, "I love chocolate, but it will literally kill me."
But there's so much stuff if you go all the way down the 2 of that show that it's like, oh my gosh, this got deep. Oh, it just got deeper. Oh, now he's gonna learn. Oh my gosh, now he's gonna learn. Oh my gosh, that's rock bottom. Now he's gonna learn. Oh, now he's gonna learn, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And that was Matthew Perry's story. 100%.
The episode where he gives the eulogy.
Oh, last churro. That was
like that, and then the twist, like, because you're funny, because like the whole thing's like, isn't this a comedy? And then the twist, you're like, oh god, that's horrible but funny.
Yeah. If there was ever a nihilistic show and then really pulled off going full nihilism, it was that show. But I'm telling you, that book wasn't much different. And then, of course, the one thing that he says, he's kind of trying to make like a bright side at the end of it. He's like, well, at least I have my activism now, and I'll get into my activism. And it's like, just to me, like summed up the perfect thing of like, oh, so you've just been like a pile of self-absorbed addiction for 20 years. And now you think you can kind of make it better by tossing some money at some horse shit. And
it's like some depressed woman in like the, I don't know, 20s or whatever, being like, well, I'm really sad and I've had these troubles, but at least now they have this new fancy drug called methamphetamine. That'll help out.
Yeah. And he's been through every drug and he's been through every extreme hospital experience and then still just keeps going. And then he adds this whole long story. It's just like BoJack Horseman has this long story about how hypnosis helped him quit cigarettes. And it really, really worked. And it's like a whole chapter. And then the next one's like, and 3 days later, I started cigarettes again. And it's like, why did I just listen to that whole chapter, man?
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal. But speaking of which, like there was a whole I listened to this whole entire thing about NGOs and how NGOs are the new empire building things. Like Tony Blair has all these NGOs all over Africa, and the way they like BS their language and put all this corporate language to their crap. That's really how they go around, colonizing again, is using all these NGOs. Are you guys frozen or am I frozen? I thought you guys were frozen.
No,
okay,
we're very still.
I talked to you guys a little bit, like a couple episodes ago, and that one was because of lag. Like there was a couple times that when I listened back, I realized, well, in that moment, I thought they were just sitting there and they were actually talking, and it was my computer was lagging. And now you guys are sitting.
We thought you were just being a huge ass.
Yeah. And now you guys are sitting there all quiet, and I'm like, it's lagging. I'm doing it.
I just assume it's my connection because my connection is pretty dodgy.
Let's see here. Charles Wagner thanks us for reconciling some ex-Mormon stuff with the Mormon stuff. Well, thanks for listening, but we're all still figuring it out as we go too. Because today we're going to beat up on a Mormon. Yeah, right. He's a Mormon.
Actually, just because some of the facts happen to support our opinions doesn't mean we have bias. All right.
I think what you mean is all of the facts.
Dude, that guy. I'm sure we're getting to him. Yeah. But before we get to him, I want to just drop real quick that I watched earlier this week an episode of Midnight Mormons.
Oh yeah, which one?
That was
the Treasure Digger one.
Stupid. No, this one was like I have heard some stupid apologetics, but this one was some dentist saying that the hypothetical planet X.
Oh, that one? You listen? That's the only one I skip.
I listen to the whole thing.
I was like, I don't want to listen to that one.
Because I am like, I mean, I'm at one of my dorky things I often do is fall asleep reading Wikipedia articles about space and shit. So I've actually done a lot of reading about that kind of shit. And just like that was one of the like stupidest, like longest shots, most contrived things. And the way that like the Midnight Mormons are just eating it up, it's like, oh come on, guys, like this is stupid. This one's dumb.
In an Alex Jonesy way, I like how they have fun with that stuff and listen to it, and like they're open to kind of anything being like that. But those episodes, I also will.
Did you ever see their CES letter takedown?
I watched
a couple of those. Those are way old, aren't they? Like,
yeah, they don't have them up anymore, but you could probably find them. I'll have to find. I think my wife still has it on her channel. Me and her and my brother-in-law, like, drunkenly watched the entire things and reviewed them. I remember them being pretty bad, but I was also drunk, so who knows. But the one I was seeing that came up was the Joseph Smith was not a treasure digger one.
Oh, that Hannah person.
I watched that one.
I thought about watching it, and then I was like, well, I guess that'll be interesting if they can debunk that, because I haven't really researched the whole treasure digging thing very much. But the thing is, like, it's not gonna change my mind.
I think there's some interesting ideas in that one, that some of the people who made the claims had bones to pick and all that sorts of stuff. And
sure.
But that's really like the entire thing rests on that, like, well, his enemy said this. Like, okay.
Well, true, but there is a level of that one being like, maybe he didn't do it as much as they claimed that he did it. But then, like, what's funny about the episode is Quaco, who kind of likes that stuff, is like, oh, hey, come on. I want him to be a treasure digger. That's the cool stuff. Yeah.
That's most of Brian Hale's apologetics. Is just like, well,
it didn't really happen.
Well, you're getting that from the enemy, the person that doesn't like him very much. And he'll come up with some analogy like, well, if I'm in a crowd of people and I can't see what's happening because they're standing up in front of me, am I going to listen later to the people who hated the guy or the people that liked the guy? And you're acknowledging the bias on one side while totally just dismissing it on the other.
But it's worth knowing that argument too, though, because
sure, I might watch it.
I might not have known that they had that rebuttal or something like that. Now I know they have that rebuttal, but. Yeah, the one that I thought was interesting was with Jacob Hansen, and he made a point that is a general point that I would like to make. I would like to make it with Dan McClellan and make it with John DeLynn, and it's that there's no neutral, well, that's the start of the thing. And of course, he goes on to saying that their idea is to build a kingdom, but I like his idea of like a voluntarist kingdom instead of like a pressured kingdom. Although we all kind of know that if Mormonism got too much power, it would be a little bit more than voluntarist.
Well, sure. That's that's one thing I don't get is whenever you sort of bring up because a lot of people will criticize it by saying, well, you guys don't like communism, but the law of consecration as it's written looks kind of like a form of communism. And then the biggest response is always, well, it's voluntary. And I'm like, but that's what we're going to live in the afterlife. Is that part like voluntary? Yeah. It feels like we kind of have to do it.
Yeah. As long as the concept's voluntary, but the thing is like, it always seems like, just like we've watched with free speech over the years, it actually seems like whoever's in charge is the less free one, and so Marxists are all about, oh, we're all going to be living together, it's all going to be all great and that stuff, and then they get in charge and like, no, you must follow this thing or you die. And it doesn't seem that much different like when religions take the top hand, you know what I mean? So it's almost kind of like, I see it as like, you guys got to be balance of powers and fight each other off so neither one of you takes the full power. And because none of the rest of it can do it. Aaron McIntyre always has the saying that the people who care are always going to womp on the people who want everybody to just leave everybody alone. So the people who organize and care about making a thing are just going to kind of walk all over everybody's like, leave us alone. But then you can't form like a coalition of, leave us alone.
You've noticed that I tell everybody that my politics have always been based off just fucking leave me alone. And that's why I never, ever, ever will get my way. So.
Let's see here. We got Christopher from Before the Crow's Nest. Troy Levitt says, Porsche Times The Gun Show starring,
Bang, bang.
Maple Lake Mountain, what's up? There's Forrest from Latter-day Skeptics saying boo. Did you boo?
It was Jacob. It was right when you were talking about Jacob. He booed.
You booed me? You talking about your brother? I think your brother's got some interesting philosophy and politics. And but
his apologetics are crap.
I don't know. I also don't know that I'd trust that once they started taking, like, you can be on their side when they're underdogs, and that's kind of one of the arguments I would have with Lynn and Larson and those guys, and maybe some other people. Is like, we live in Utah, so they seem like the overdogs or whatever, but in the world, they're underdogs, and they're so you can kind of always side with underdogs until they become overdogs, and then they become the authoritarians and
Yeah, because the other thing is, like, I mean, I bring it up all the time. Like, I live in downtown Salt Lake City. I work with no Mormons. I don't know that any of my neighbors are Mormons. Like, as far as as far as my day-to-day life is, like, I don't encounter Mormonism. I just don't. And I'm in the center of the most populous Mormon city in the world. So go figure.
That's one of the funny things about. Do you remember that? We had that clip, and it was that kangaroo from that movie, and he was saying, "Oh, you and I can be friends until the revolution." And then, it's like but there's a lot of stuff that feels like that. That's one of my general arguments. This is why I try to describe it as what happened with Mormons. Is if you ever watch the TV show, what do I call it? Deadwood. I describe it like Deadwood, and in Deadwood, the very first season, there's this horrible guy. They're moving west. They're heading out west, and as they're heading out west, they have to create civilization. Civilization is growing out in the wild, wild nowheres, and there's some authoritarian dickhead who runs a bar who's pushing everybody around and beating them around, and he's the main enemy in the first season, and they all fight and show down like old Wild West stuff and that sort of deal, and it's great. And he is an enemy. He's a terrible enemy, Al Swearingen, and it's really well done. And then as stuff goes on, some Pinkertons and some larger kind of WEF type people kind of start coming in and sociopathically start stomping on all of them and their freedoms. And in a weird way, they have to align and become teams against this larger thing that's coming to stomp out everybody. And that's the only way I kind of view like a political coalition of with the religious.
Sure, it's just tough because like the whole, I don't know. I've been thinking about the apologetics thing, and you say that Jacob's apologetics blow. I don't know because I've never listened to them really, but I don't know how to do good apologetics. I feel like with Mormon apologetics, there's just varying degrees of not very good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
don't think I've ever who's a good.
It's defending an impossible position. It's defending an impossible position, which is why, like, I always go back to that Christopher Hitchens thing where he says, "Do yourself a favor and call it faith." Like, that's really, what is that? Like, do yourself a favor, call it faith, and then that way it's untouchable.
Oh, I know, that's the thing. When they say, well, how the Book of Abraham doesn't seem to line up, I think the best answer is just like, I will have faith. So,
but what Maple Lake Mountain here says here is that Jacob's apologetics is to challenge the critic, is that I think that you should be able to take that on. And we had that long back and forth with Anthony Miller, and he's like saying, you can't have, John DeLeon can't have Jacob Hansen on. Why? Forrest has already had him on multiple times. He's been on with a bunch of other people. It's not like he's like some devil. He was just on Pine Creek earlier today, and they had a perfectly good conversation. He got like philosophical about.
I mean, he's a reasonable guy. It feels like they're constantly trying to look for something that's like the nail in the coffin, like because there is a nail in the coffin in anyone. Like that. Now I don't have to speak to this guy. It's a thought stopper. I don't have to talk to him. Yeah. Full stop. And they're really searching for that with somebody like Jacob, and then they find it in him saying that, don't pay taxes if you can avoid it. And they're like, oh, so it's okay to lie to the government. Everybody believes it's okay to lie to some degree, unless you're like Immanuel Kant and you say, no, you have to tell the Nazis that there's Jews in your attic. But other than that, like, everybody will lie to somebody that they think is evil and wishes them harm. And it's very hard to say that the government is going to use those taxes for anything worthwhile.
Yeah. But as Maple Lake says, Jacob's apologetics is to challenge the critic. But the thing is I think the critics need to be able to take on the challenges. Like any single debate, you can't just stop and say, nope, you're on the hot seat. And that's the end of the debate. That's it. That's who won. That's the nature of, that's why, anytime people start getting to this thing, and I wanted to talk about it later because Marty might come on, but about like what's the definition of woke. Well, whoever starts and sits down and says, define your thing, that's who won. I mean, that's what we're doing. That's the game of Socrates right there. Whoever's sitting in the seat of your things in the hot seat, the other person's winning. So I think like any like real debate should have two questions to it. One when you're on the hot seat and one when you're on the hot seat. And you take the Socratic bullcrap question all the way down.
Well, one thing like this woke thing, I mean, because I just watched that clip where I guess it's going viral where some lady wrote a whole book about woke and then was asked what does woke mean, and she had a total like blue screen of death and broke down. And it's like, because the answer is what capital W woke is critically conscious.
I want to exactly
critical theory idea that you can go to any American university, humanities department, search those terms. There you go. That's what it is.
And you can like do some sort of quick thing that the thing the general public knows is like just say something like hysterically politically correct. But the way that some people on the right use it nowadays, it's true that they'll just call anything woke and then they muddy waters of stuff.
Well, that's one of those things like, that I like about James Lindsay is he puts stuff so succinctly, and like one of the things he says is conservatives get things wrong all the time. And he's talking about this exact thing about this conversation. And that's part of what muddies it, is that like sometimes you get this thing where like jackasses like Sean Hannity will just come on and do dumb Hannity Republican hack shit, and it muddies all the things. People just point at that and go like, see, nobody knows what they're talking about when they mean woke. Like, no, Hannity is a conservative hack. He gets shit wrong all of the time. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I just put in critical consciousness, and there's 10 million fucking links to 10 million goddamn school organizations that'll tell you exactly what the fuck it means.
Yeah.
Wikipedia. Critical consciousness focuses on achieving an in-depth understanding of the world, allowing for the perception exposure of social and political blah, blah, blah. There you go. Like, that's just on the Google theory. It's the simplest thing in the world to define.
But then that critical consciousness has a Mott and Bailey definition to it, too, because, I mean, there's the capital C critical consciousness, which is Frankfurt School critical consciousness, which is find disparity in all things. Current day is find those disparities in hierarchies of oppression, and we have a lot of different fields of hierarchies of oppression, and be overly like any disparity must be, one of the things I want to start talking about, Dan McClellan, is Dan McClellan, the big word user. This is called a rhetorical prophylaxis because he likes to drop all these big, fat, dumb words. They were complaining that Jordan Peterson used the big words univariate versus multivariate analysis. And that's one of the things about critical consciousness is use a univariate analysis to say, hey, there's a disparity. There must be an oppression going on here. And,
so what's funny is that I Googled the term rhetorical prophylaxis. The first thing is an NIH link to a 1979 study called Prevention, Rhetoric, and Reality. And it's about medicine. The second is the Merriam-Webster definition of just prophylaxis, which is just regular meaning. Third, Dan McClellan on Twitter. Then after that, a bunch of medical shit.
Yeah.
Like, he made up that term, and it's a bad one.
Do you know what that term means?
We should start doing rhetorical diuretics.
Did you see my special name today?
Yeah.
I mean, prophylactic is a condom.
Yeah. You know what that term is? It's just white fragility. It's just it's his version of white fragility, but he wants to sound smarter than Robin.
Well, and he also doesn't want to have culturally appropriated anything from anybody.
It's odd. It's actually the only time I've ever thought that he seems dumb is just the amount of times he's used that phrase.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that up right now.
It's
I'm gonna
like
pull
that actually, that's the only time I've ever watched him do something like, oh, that's actually stupid, the thing you just did. Because usually it's like, well, that's evil, but I understand you're crazy.
There's a couple things that seem really dumb and really oblivious by him, but I think those ones are especially evil because I don't think he's oblivious. Like, I give him the credit to be smart enough to know what he's doing in those situations, which means he's a Machiavellian and not a...
I put a comment on one of his videos where I got the quote wrong. I got the quote wrong, but I got the meaning exactly right. He's like, I don't think I ever said that. And I linked him to the thing where he answers your question, where you say, do you have political bias? He says, no, I have no political bias, just because some, I'm sure you'll find it,
But
just because the facts support some political opinions and no bias. He fucking deleted my comment.
Yeah,
He's such
and that's what he did to us. We were pinning him to the wall.
And then I'm blocked on. I was thinking, like, I'm blocked on Facebook with him. I had exactly one interaction with him, and it was a link to Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, and he blocked you, and the rest of us were starting to pin him to the wall about critical race theory. And then he deleted all of our comments and blocked.
He blocked me for saying that racism is just prejudice based on race.
Is blocking people that say true things that run against your preferred belief, is that a form of rhetorical prophylaxis?
Not just blocking. Because I haven't come across many people who are like, I delete the whole conversation because I'm losing here. I mean, it's like I take my bottle and go home. I'm Dan McKinney.
Lindsay Park will wipe out an entire conversation.
Here's him calling Jordan Peterson a Christo fascist. Which, hey, want to define a word for us? Define for us fascist. Define for us Christo fascist. Yeah, word definers. Look at this. Look at all
of these. Big back and forth on that lobster group about.
So that's one search for rhetorical.
That's all of the times, and those are all different. I read them all. Every one of those is different. I'm not repeating them. Those are all.
What's the time?
I thought he did like 5, and 5 was enough to like, you're overusing that word, dude. But that's how much he's used it. Like, you can read it. You should have learned in high school that it was just a joke. It's just rhetorical prophylaxis for bullying. You should have learned that in high school, guy. Jokers are frequently problematic, and particularly when it's a clinical psychologist telling someone. Let's see here.
Jokers just a joke. Oh, wait. So
it's such an embarrassment that Utah has state legislators who he likes the word blithely too. Deploy idiotic and long debunked conspiracy theories as rhetorical prophylaxis for mindless right-wing authoritarianism.
Perfect projection. That is unbelievable projection right there.
When a Republican lawmaker deploys because freedom, it is to serve one or both of 2 primary functions: as an identity marker, 2 as rhetorical prophylaxis for because money.
Identity marker?
Yeah.
Okay, Hitler.
He says all politics are identity politics. That's one of his things. Should I expect an actual substantive response to my argument, or just this weak rhetorical prophylaxis?
I mean, what if he says all politics are identity politics? We've got him right there. You're a neo-Marxist. End of story.
Yeah.
Like we that's your religion, and we just get to throw that in your face forever and ever and ever until you recant. You're a religious hack, and like it's particularly a religion that believes that it's okay to lie to get to your goals. I think we are seeing Dan do that.
Oh yeah.
I think he's bad at hiding.
He's a Machiavellian. He's everything he's doing, I think, is for political purposes and intentional. And I think I'm going to pull up a couple of his video clips that are so he's projecting so hard that I think he knows he's projecting as a smokescreen.
That dipshit, he defined fascism as individualistic. Like, what the fuck are you smoking? And that was when I got into it. I got into it with Ty Brown on the Lobster page. We had a few back and forths, but we had a back and forth on this. I was like, who the fuck calls fascism individualistic? And then he was like, well, he added Christo to the beginning of it, and so it could change the meaning when you add a prefix. And I was like, okay, but that means that Christo-fascist means not fascist. Like, you took one of the core pillars of fascism, the rigid collectivism, and you just took it out and said, we're opposite of that.
Like, I think that the Bill of Rights is excellent, and I uphold that thing. That's a great document. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that's good. And that opinion that I just expressed is what makes me a fascist, according to dipshits like Dan McClellan.
It's rhetorical.
Which is obviously, oh, damn it, I forgot. I was just trying to protect my identity politics.
This is so profoundly ignorant and harmful. Legislators who try to prohibit CRT are only facilitating rhetorical prophylaxis for white supremacy.
CRT is literally rhetorical prophylaxis for a conspiracist racist theory. Or racist conspiracy theory.
You're appealing to dogma as rhetorical prophylaxis for the shortcomings of your exegesis flip. Oh, God. Look at that. I'm not even halfway down one column there.
Oh my God. God damn it. What is it like to be in his house?
Oh, man.
God, can you imagine being one of his children coming into him with a question? Oh my God. You know what would be so fun is like if we could slip a copy of Thomas Sowell's book into his children's backpack and find it at home. What is this? Where did you get this? I don't know, Dad.
Oh my gosh. You uncritically adopt a revisionist conceptualization of racism that developed during the civil rights movement as a rhetorical prophylaxis for white power structures.
Are you gonna give the fucking credit to Derek Bell there, you fuckface?
Oh my God, he's culturally appropriating.
Jesus Christ. Like this, God, I didn't like this guy, and I didn't look at all these, but go through these one by one. Everyone makes me a little angrier.
Petty and ignorant sectarianism as rhetorical prophylaxis for losing an argument.
Says the guy.
Shit, we're only back to August.
Can't say that to surprise.
Comments. Says the guy who will delete a comment that proves that he's lying. God
LOL. What a pathetic attempt at rhetorical prophylaxis for your knuckle dragging ignorance. Use the knuckle draggings in the game again. It's 2013. He's back. Let's see. Understanding racism is generic racial prejudice. This is aimed at you. This is why you got blocked, Jared. Yeah, Understanding racism is generic racial prejudice is rhetorical prophylaxis for white supremacy and white privilege. Research has repeatedly shown that white folks like that understanding because it protects self-image, and so that's what I'm saying right there. It's white. Dude, it's white fragility. It's just his
so fucking white fragility. Like chill, and I was not snarky with him. I was pretty.
I came in hot,
level-headed, and like that's all I said. I was like, I don't believe that that's racism, and he's like, how would that not be racism? I was like, I don't buy the whole power dynamics definition of racism. I think that racism is prejudice based on race. It's pretty simple. And then he said that definition, the power dynamics definition is widely accepted by, I don't know, like fucking everyone or whatever he said. He said, you, sir, are, what is it? Oh, fuck. What was it? Profoundly racist? Or
something like that.
It was something like that. And then he blocked me, like, immediately.
And you can't, those blocks that you can't respond. You can't even respond once. And then he deletes. He does the stuff. He did this to Jonathan, where he left his comments up and removed Jonathan's return comments. Which is even worse because some of those other ones he deleted the whole thread, but he do the other ones where he left it looking like he dunked on Jonathan and removed Jonathan's responses.
Yeah. On the other thing, I mean, when he says like, "Oh, it's widely accepted by academics," like that's exactly as meaningful as saying like, "Oh, the Mormon view of the Godhead is widely accepted by Mormons." No, duh. That's our fucking point.
Academics, yeah. When I came in at him, I came at him hot because I mean. This is all a little bit easier for us because he mostly takes on people who are hardcore Bible believers, right? So it kind of puts us in an advantage coming at him because I come in it saying, you know, we're already kind of like on the page, like, yeah, the Bible is what people make of it, you know what I mean? And nobody proves that more than Dan McClellan. But I came in hot saying, like, you're an expert in Dungeon and Dragon rules, buddy. That's what you're an expert at. You're an expert at that, and then and not even like an expert because you're still gonna like push for the way that you think the Dungeon and Dragon rules should be interpreted. That's what you're an expert in. And this is the other thing. I mean, we're gonna pull it up in his videos, but he keeps calling himself like a linguist and a PhD linguist and all that stuff. And I'm sorry because you like use some cognitive science in your PhD, your theology degree to review Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John or something like that doesn't mean that you're a cognitive scientist. Like, come on. And that's half of his charlatanry. He's going around talking about words like the words are data and saying that go ahead.
It's obvious that he literally thinks he's smarter than everyone else.
Yeah, he's the expert that should be interpreting for us, and he's the one who can. He's proven to us that he doesn't understand people all the time on Twitter who make a point to him. But we're supposed to take his sole word for like what somebody meant 2,000 years ago, translated across 3-4 different languages.
He thinks that he's the philosopher king. He's nominated himself as the guy.
Yep.
Em Harris definitely thinks that.
And he popped up on Lex Friedman again this week.
That was amazing.
So I'm gonna. Oh, come on, Charlie, what you doing? Let's see here. Which one should I pull first of all? I want to pull like he just barely put up like a new channel description. And
yeah, I didn't get to see that yet.
That's the first one I'll pull.
Oh man, like, I didn't watch the whole thing, and then you sent that clip, and I was
it's just the latter half of it. So I'll pull because I have 4 degrees and I do all this sorts of stuffies and but then here it is. I'm sure I'm at the right spot. Can you hear it?
This is astounding right here.
This is the stuff I'm saying. Like, because you reviewed the Bible using some cognitive linguistics and got it in your PhD paper doesn't make you a cognitive linguistic scientist. But in your divinity school paper,
linguist here,
and
divine images through the methodological lenses of both cognitive linguistics and the cognitive science.
His whole data thing, and this is one of the very first Sokol experiment, the one that James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian duplicated to make fun of current day critical theory. The first Sokol experiment was making fun of Lacan and Deleuze, but the main thing, because that stuff was word gibberish garbage stuff, but one of the main things he was making fun of is their envy of the scientific realm and how they tried to pretend like all the stuff that they were talking about was some hardcore technical MIT science stuff. And that's what this goober does constantly all day. It's a hardcore technical, because he's partially postmodern. He's Foucauldian postmodern, but he's not Derrida postmodern. He's into structuralism. He's not post-structuralist. He's into structuralism. He thinks that he can decipher for us what words mean 100% perfectly, especially over time. And so, like Jonathan Streeter says, some stuff's deconstruction for thee, but not for me. Like current day critical theorists do. They pick and choose their postmodernism. And that's one of the things like you get in arguments with people like, it's not postmodernism. Like, we know they pick and choose the postmodernism that's convenient for their weaponization.
Religion, and a revised version of my doctoral dissertation was published in 2022 by SBL Press as an open access volume entitled Adonai's Divine Images, A Cognitive Approach. And you can freely access that volume through the link on my link tree. Now, I am an active member of the Church of Jesus.
All of your papers, if we put James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian up to it, just like they did that other crap, they could have your PhD in 3, 4, 5 months.
What is it called? Anomized?
Adonized.
Adonized?
Ask me what that means.
I was an employee.
Adonized?
Employee of the church for over a decade. I worked as a scripture translation supervisor.
Some people online were saying that he got forced out and fired. He denied it outright, but I was wondering because there's enough different people saying it, but it might have just been a rumor or something like that.
Supervisor up until January of 2023. However, I am not here to represent the church, neither as a member nor as a former employee. I'm not here to defend, share, or spread their ideologies or their doctrines.
Because you don't believe.
Oh, we know, and they know.
Because you're trying to turn them upside down for your political purpose.
We know that your Mormonism is your Mormonism as long as it's useful to you, and as soon as it stops, you won't be that anymore. And as long as it's not, you won't claim it. I want to hold on to it as long as it's rhetorically useful. Your Mormonism is a form of rhetorical prophylaxis.
And re-territorialize it into something that will get you elected.
I want to find his ward and just go there and I bet the gospel doctrines teacher just fucking hates him.
He is the gospel doctrines teacher.
Oh, of course he is.
He talked about that just a couple months ago.
You raise your hand and you're like, well, I felt that Jesus felt my pain in the Garden of Gethsemane. Actually, there's exactly no data to support that. It is utterly false that Jesus, if he really existed, did in fact suffer, because the human body actually is not capable of suffering it. And then somebody's just going to be like, shut the fuck up.
I just imagine the conversation. What'd you learn in church today, honey?
Then some other lady raises her hand and says, Jesus says he hates my white kids. And then he goes, well, I appreciate your rhetorical desires, or however he says that crap before he goes and correct. When somebody's on his political side and he gives that preamble to say, I appreciate your rhetorical intentions here.
You're wrong, but your intentions are good. So
I'm here to represent
okay. I love
as best
scene.
I possibly can a critical academic approach to the study of the Bible and religion.
To be
capital C critical.
Capital C critical, you sneaky fuck. You don't mean critical in the way that ordinary people mean critical.
Woke.
pure
What does that
objectivity
mean?
is not possible.
It doesn't mean crystal fastest.
But as a specialist in the cognitive science of religion,
specialist.
You are
specialize. You use some cognitive, like you pulled out. Now I'm going to simplify it for sure, but just to make a joke, you used Malcolm Gladwell's books and applied it to Luke and John and said, "Look, I'm a cognitive scientist."
Spend an unsettling amount of time thinking about my own biases and how they.
Oh yeah, you're real unsettled. We can tell.
I'm gonna repeat that one there.
That's thinking about my own biases and how they influence my work. So I work harder than most to try to recognize and ferret out any such biases and any such influence. And
projection. That's just delusion. Is that just pure delusion?
It's hard to tell. Like, is he consciously lying, or is he totally deluded there?
So Flip had a
I worked harder to.
Flip had the back and forth with him.
He deleted it.
He had a back and forth with him, and he pointed out to him the moment where I asked him if he felt that he was politically biased, and he said that his political biases were 100% data driven, so there's no bias.
No. He says I have no political bias because, we can find the clip. But he said just because the facts support certain political opinions or positions, doesn't make it a bias. Like, okay, no, that's your bias. That is your bias. You fuck.
There's no neutral, and that's one of the points that it's a general point. It's a point that Jacob was making, another thing. But there's other people make that point better. But like that neutrality thing, well, that's a postmodern point. But I think there's truth to it. Is like you're not. Especially people like him who are 100%, to give Foucault some credit. Like if he were to just put all of his thoughts out, and then 100 years from now, we go back and look at his thoughts will be squarely in the 2023 Cathedral of Academia thought of this is how people thought about stuff in 2023 academia. It's 100% that bias and trained to be that bias. It's an episteme, as Foucault might say. I don't know how to pronounce that in French. Anybody speak French? Episteme or something like that. And he's totally got a neoliberal episteme, and he's deterritorializing, I can say that word now, all of Mormonism from individualistic, crystal fascist beliefs, and saying that, hey, this is open. The data is open for. It's scientifically true that it was actually always 2023 liberalism all along. We figured it out with the data. That's what we figured out.
We've been calling him McData, but should we just call him McMachiavelli?
Yeah, Machiavelli McData. That's
McMachiavelli McData.
Yeah. Didn't Tupac used to call himself Machiavelli? He would call him Tupac McData. But we should probably pull that other clip where he says he has no biases, because it's only a matter of time until he deletes it, because he pointed it out to him. But
so like I've decided, like every time he puts up a new video, I'm gonna post it. I even told him I put it in the comment. I'm like, I am going to bring this up every time you post anything, unless and until you recant. Like that's the deal. As soon as you admit, oh no, I do have political bias, then I'll stop harassing you about it. But
what's your doctorate in, Flip?
But it's one of the things that drives us bonkers about DeLynn and all those guys is their claim to neutrality. Their claim to neutrality is so frustrating because it's so far the opposite of that. And you can appreciate better somebody who's just open about what their bias is. And let's see here.
Did you find it? I'm looking for it.
Yeah, but you send it to me if you find it first. I can pull up the other clip of him.
I mean, if you go to his, there it is.
You pulled it up earlier. You have it on the thread somewhere. But Charlie, come on. Let's see.
Here it is. If you go to 101.15.
Yeah, okay, we'll get back to this one another time. Are you sharing it to me on this or in the?
It's in StreamYard chat. I don't know what's better. Chat. I'll send it to the other thing because apparently you don't know where the StreamYard chat is.
I found it. I got it. 115.
So I just switched over to Facebook because you know that I get those ads.
Wait, there is no 115.
10115.
Okay. So what were you saying?
On Facebook, there's that Brooklyn Institute for Social Research, which is an unabashedly Marxist an organization, and they've got this ad for it's called "Imagining Utopia: Politics, Planning, and the Impossible." Blah blah blah. Guess how much it costs to find out how to live in a world without money?
I don't know. Probably as much as it costs for an hour of critical race.
$315. $315 to take a course on a utopian future with no money. These guys are shameless.
Well, it only costs $50,000 for an hour of D'Angelo, so you know.
But, all right, this is so wonderful.
The learning curve is too steep for me. No biases except the political ones, right? No biases. The fact that the data supports certain political positions isn't a sign of bias.
He's such a yut. He's such an absolute yut.
Like, for a guy that spent so much time in school, I don't know if he knows what data is.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like he just says it, like, no matter what you say, like he had that whole thing of, our Jonathan and David lovers. And his response to that is like, well, the data are inconclusive. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean the data? Are you talking about like scriptural, like, and what are you looking for? This is the part where the internet atheists need to come in and be like, okay, who's trying to prove a negative here? Like, you're saying there's no data, there's no scripture that says, no, David and Jonathan weren't butt fucking.
Yeah. The we'll get to that's his next clip. We'll show that one.
I didn't even watch the one today where he says, "Does the Bible condemn homosexuality?"
Oh well, oh my gosh, because he keeps repeating it. He's said that one more than once, so I'm not going to pull that one. But he just kind of claims that when Paul was condemning some type of homosexuality or Leviticus or something.
Well, that was just
all right. Let's see it. So he says that he's condemning a certain type of homosexuality where the man was on top and it was a certain slave during some certain time of carnival. Well, so it's just this very, very specific moment of homosexuality.
He's not totally wrong there, except for the part where his conclusions are stupid. Because, like, I remember that's the thing that Bob Price, like, I mean, man, I wish somebody would find it and compile them. But he once spent like an hour and a half answering this question and basically going through the entire Bible and everything that might reference it. And that's things like in Paul, there is a thing because like they use a Greek word and it's like, and if you know anything about the ancient Greeks, they had some weird ideas about sex and sexuality. And like, there is that thing where like, you know, because there was a Greek word for like just plain homosexual love. And this was a word that like normally you wouldn't use for that. But so is that what they meant? There's a whole thread but like
by this rabbi, and they said that he was talking about it too, where they talked about all these indications where the data might indicate that King David was gay with Jonathan, and it's because like, well, there was some sort of stuff in the text of how he said this word, and then they handed each other's clothes, and so that might all well be interpreted as a marriage between the two of them, and that they had some sorts of love. Go ahead.
Well, this one's actually even better example of him not understanding what the fuck the word data means, because his proof of this, it's like somebody expressing like a feeling they get from God or whatever, and him be like, well, the data does not support that. Like,
that's exactly it.
It's William Lane Craig explaining that like God is omnipotent, and Dan saying, well, the data as in Bible verses. The Bible verses are the data that don't confirm that?
To me, this one's, I mean, not to poison the well, but we're already poisoned it. This is the projection of all projection.
I think that from a Molinist perspective or a middle knowledge perspective, we can understand these verses to mean that God knew that if Pharaoh were in these circumstances, he would freely react by hardening his heart.
Hey, everybody, this video illustrates one of the central methodological shortcomings of biblical apologetics. And that is that biblical apologetics doesn't allow the data to operate on their own terms, certainly does not follow the data where they lead. Rather, it treats data as an obstacle that is to be overcome in pursuit of the desired goal. And that does
That's not happening at all in woke Bible studies. Not at all.
This is the guy who deletes people or blocks people for linking Thomas Sowell.
People who are trying to rewrite it all as woke Bible studies, and they're not doing any of that at all, and you're one of them.
Desired goal is usually an ideology that is being imposed upon the text. A rule that
an ideology imposed upon the text.
But like, what data could possibly disprove the claim made? Because the claim was God knew how Pharaoh would react. Like, God, this guy we believe is omnipotent, understood how a human would react to a thing.
I mean, look, this is the thing that's stupid about this, is that William Lane Craig is a jackass. Like, William Lane Craig and Dan are two sides of a coin, or not. That's not even. They're the same kind of guy. Like they.
That's what my comment to him on this was. Like, you prove your point. You prove your point very well. That everybody commenting in this sphere is just turning that Bible into what suits their ideology, and you are a perfect example of it. Yeah. Thanks for making the point for us.
No,
because so is he, and so are you. Yes,
I see that. The way I see it, like William Lane Craig and Dan McClellan are two religiously motivated hacks who have learned to disingenuously and dishonestly use academic sounding language in order to make sophistic bullshit.
Yeah,
you guys are in the exact same game.
And this is a mind read by me. Well, a little different, because this is my mind read on him. My mind read is I don't think he believes at all. I think he's a Machiavellian who views it all as politically useful.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's probably.
And I think William Lane Craig might actually believe his.
I think William Craig is a dedicated believer.
I don't believe Dan McClellan believes anything of any of this stuff.
Using the text to conform to, and luckily for apologetics, they don't have to make a strong argument. All they have to do is be able to gin up the tiniest little sliver of not physically impossible.
That is such absolute pure projection. But the thing is, why I think he's a Machiavellian is I think he knows that this is exactly what he does. And by pointing it out so specifically in another, he views it as a cloak. Like he knows that he's doing this. That's my opinion on him. I think that he's such a Machiavellian that he thinks calling out exactly what he knows he's doing is his way to hide it. That's what I believe.
I'm with you there. I don't think this is on accident. I don't know. Maybe we give him too much credit because
yeah, it's true because it's credit. It's credit that he's smarter than this. It's credit like you say data points. He always reads his dumb letter about why the data supports his politics, and he usually starts out about how in America the death rates of births are higher than any other nation. And you go, Dan, I know you were smart enough to know that stupid little thing that you keep reading is bullcrap and is easily debunkable in 2 minutes. And it's all just about how you collect data, but you know that, and you know to just use it how you want to use it. And yeah, it's given him way more credit that he's not so stupid and dumbheaded to just. He's smart enough to understand what multivariate analysis means. He's smart enough to understand that when we point at Thomas Sowell and somebody says, "Oh, give me some," he'll say something like, "You got to give me some peer-reviewed statistical thing that doesn't say that black people aren't at fault for their own thing." And you go, "There's no one single statistical thing that you can get that describes it. You want a cosmic injustice described in one single peer-reviewed statistical analysis. You need to listen to all of Thomas Sowell, where he takes an entire book of explaining all these different places in the world where highly discriminated minorities turned into superpowers. That happens under our noses all over the place, and those people were discriminated against in their countries, not just in the U.S. It's happened in Canada. It's happened in Sri Lanka. It's happened in all over the world. And Thomas Sowell painstakingly goes through each and every one of them. And it's not saying that you should be able to rise above discrimination. It's just saying that you've got to take more factors into your analysis here about why people are failing. There's a million points.
In a previous episode, I made a joke about how Charlie is the man because Charles means the man, and that was actually a mistake. Carl, Charles, Carlos, all versions of that name, Carl. It's not the man. I got that wrong. It means free man. And that goes back into the prehistory of Germanic language.
Let's see
in a European time when there were only white people. So if Carl was the free man, that indicates that there were people who were not free. They were white Europeans who were not free.
The word
How the hell did that happen, Dan? How the fuck did that happen?
Slavic and Slav comes from the slave, and you should read what Karl Marx said about the Slavs. Oh my goodness. He did not like the Slavs. But strange enough, they were the first ones to try to take up his bullcrap. Yeah.
See, he's at like quite the advantage here when he's arguing with people, because he is fully aware that he is arguing for the audience. It's like playing a game of Secret Hitler, you know? I hate playing that game because I know that I have to lie, and I know that I have to lie to a guy who knows I'm lying and I'm trying to make him look like a liar. I squirm when I play that game, you know? And have you ever played that game?
I don't think I know.
Like you get these cards.
I know what it is, yeah.
And there's like, if there's 6 people playing, then 4 of the cards are liberals, and then 1 card is fascist, and 1 card is Secret Hitler. You have to find out who is Secret Hitler.
I've played the Battlestar Galactica board game is based on that mechanic.
Do you want to hear? Do you want to hear one of my poker tricks? You want to hear one of my poker tricks? Do you want to hear what it is?
What?
Tell the truth.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
Stare him in the face and say I'm bluffing, and just say it to him. And when you're bluffing,
I've watched him do this. It's amazing.
Yeah, it gets him every time.
I've tried to do where it's like, I say like, well, if 8 means I hit my straight. The 8 comes up. I got my straight.
I tell him what's coming. I tell him what's happening. I say what I got.
And then it's funny as hell, because this whole they take some of the data to indicate that it's not impossible. Like, that's so transparently what he does. It like he did it with the Jonathan and David thing. He did it with abortion. Like, there's, it's not impossible that the Bible supports abortion or whatever. It's not impossible that David and Jonathan were lovers. It's not impossible that the Bible supports homosexuality. All this shit.
Yeah.
No, it's classic religious stuff. It's what the Midnight Mormons do. It's like you just carve out a little tiny bit of philosophical territory that this thing can live in, and then say, there it is.
Because they're performing for an audience that wants to believe.
Oh God, that's what I was just saying. he's talking to, whenever he gets in an argument with other people, he's talking in a way that, like, he knows he's performing for an audience. He knows that the people, like, that's who he's talking to. So he can lie directly to your face. He can make you look stupid, as long as he doesn't get caught by the audience doing that. That's what he did with Jonathan by selectively deleting his comments.
Yeah,
and
I think this video is peak projection almost. It's like pure immaculate.
It's the most projection I've ever seen.
It's kind of hard to imagine that this is real, but it is.
Text conforms to that ideology, and they don't need to be shown that it is plausible or that is much less probable. All they need to be shown is that it is not impossible.
That is so how you insert wokeness into reading. There's this whole entire channel called Are They Gay? You remember that? We pulled them up before.
Yeah.
And the guy, all he does is go through like old movies and says, are they gay? To see if everything's coded as gay. But if you get into literary criticism, the stuff that I got into in college is half of what the critical consciousness is of that is going and seeing things where you don't see it and saying that it's plausible. Like this critical consciousness, this critical theory stuff, these papers, the entirety of it is it's plausible because of that. Like he's giving the best description of how that critical theory works and how you do it and how you turn it into academic papers. Here's that. This is that channel. Are they gay? And so everything is just like going through. It's like, and I'm subscribed to it. And it's not the worst channel. The kid does critical theory right, how you're supposed to do it. But it's going through all these old movies and all these old things and saying anything that is coded one way or the other way is referring to gayness. So anything that, like, they'll say anything that refers to a monster in any movie in any history is coded as gay. It's all gay code and always was gay code. And if it's plausible, it's true, and you can put it in a paper and you can get a PhD for it, just like James Lindsay can go get a PhD for saying that dog humping is rape culture, or he can get a PhD for saying fat bodybuilding should be fat body. It's plausible, but you can also read it into Shakespeare. You can read it into the paper that I got published was me saying that the Trickster of Seville was actually trying to stay subversive. It didn't try to shoot back to Catholicism and try to stay subversive, and I could just say it because it's plausible. The data in the text said it's plausible, you know.
I don't know how people don't immediately just know that the entire college system is fucked when they just find out that that one guy got accepted into college by writing that thesis that just said Black Lives Matter 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And as long as it is not impossible, then their ideology has not been proven false.
Guess what? It doesn't even need to be not impossible anymore. Hold on, that says my battery's running low.
Therefore, they are justified. Their ideology is legitimized. And that's the goal of biblical apologetics. And so here we've reached into our methodological tool bag and pulled out the Molinism approach to show that if we accept this approach, we can overcome the data that indicate pretty explicitly that God is the one who forced Pharaoh to respond in the way that he did. We can now say, oh no, God just ginned up these circumstances so that Pharaoh would respond the way Pharaoh would respond. It's fabricating scenarios that are not in evidence in order to show we can imagine a scenario in which therefore.
Okay, Dan, just show me the data that says
literature. This is a renegotiation with the text. But rather than prioritizing concern,
just show me the data that says God doesn't know how Pharaoh will react. Because that's all the guy's saying right there. Like he's just like, oh, Pharaoh would react this way, and God knows it because he knows all of the stuff. Show me a fucking verse that says God doesn't know all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a defense. Because like the way the text reads, it's kind of fucked up. Because it sounds like God fucked Pharaoh over. You know, it creates kind of a free will issue, which is obviously a big issue for Christians. And like, I don't know, it's just so much more obvious than that. But Dan has to sit here and bullshit us about it like that. Like, God damn it. Of course it's built into the Bible that God knows the future and knows our hearts. Like, there's no data for that.
Authors and audiences understood this text to be saying, even just as a jumping off point for further negotiations in order to make it meaningful and useful to audiences today, this approach silences the original authors and audiences and tells the text what is allowed to have meant originally.
There's like the whole other level of it that 2,000-year-old across multiple languages and trying to tell us what they think it means is
also that goddamned Orwellian usage of the word silenced for something that has not been silenced. Like, god damn it. Being disagreed with is not silenced. Being criticized is not being silenced.
You know that stuff that James Lindsay talked about where you can't define, like that Ketanji Brown, the Supreme Court justice, couldn't define the word woman because she needed to be an expert to define the word woman. These guys are so hardcore pushing. I see Anthony Miller do it too, that you need to be a dang biblical scholar to understand any part of that Bible at all. And you need to defer to the experts who are going to be the bottom line, the bottom axioms who tell you the truth of what the stuff means or doesn't mean. Must always defer to the experts. That's what that religious experience is like. We know what you're doing. We know what that game is. We know that the whole entire thing is we got to turn to the managerial class who's going to give us our axioms and our truths. And they're all going to lean one way that is not neutral.
So that original intended meaning is precisely what keeps the text relevant and meaningful to audiences today. This is telling the text what it is and is not allowed to say.
Projection. So the text is not allowed to say that God knows people's hearts and can predict how people will react in a particular situation. Tech's not allowed to say that, is it, Dan? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Damn, he's a shithead. I gotta stop swearing so much.
That's a reinterpretation of the Bible, you know, a renegotiation. That's renegotiating the Bible. Yeah.
Does the social justice of the Bible differ from the social justice of today?
Let's watch Dan pretend like he doesn't know that there is an Orwellian version of what social justice means compared to what everybody else understands it as.
Hey, everybody, does the social justice of today...
He admits it's not exactly the same as the old one, but he does not admit that he understands that there's an Orwellian pathological version of it going around the world today.
Differ from the social justice of the Bible. Absolutely. This is a social construct. It is a product of discourse. It does not exist outside. side of that discourse, and that discourse is different from time to time, from place to place, and from person to person. And this is one of the main reasons that I criticize Dr. Jordan Peterson for condemning the Pope's notion that social justice has anything to do with Christianity, since Dr. Peterson...
One of the things I think he does is like, I think he has to stop and calm himself down and try to talk like some emotionless sociopath, when he was obviously, like, you see him on Twitter and he's obviously got his heart in that stuff all over the place with his pathetic, weak prophylaxis, rhetorical this and that and the other. And he gets on there, I am Mr. Scientist Man. I am scientist, Bible scientist man, and I'm here to science the Bible for you.
Peterson's prescriptive notion of social justice is very distinct from the Pope's notion of social justice. But I want to identify two main ways it is distinct between the Bible and today, and then two main ways it is the same. The first way I see it as being distinct is that we have organized our understanding of what identities are minoritized, marginalized, and oppressed, and therefore
we haven't.
Minoritized?
No. Like, the Mormons have the righteous third and the wicked third they created the identities, and you're doing the same thing. Like, you made this shit up, Dan.
And certain elitist, mostly white women at colleges who also use some of their tokenized people to come in and push the idea of what they consider the marginalized class as they go developing their intersectionality that they can't agree on. That's not a we have renegotiated marginalized classes. That's top-down elitist bullshit pressuring of a different way of viewing the world. And it all has Marxist conflict theory in it because it's part of capital C critical consciousness, critical theory. Part of the idea is if there ever is something that we all obviously agree is racism, they don't give a shit about it because that's not conflicty enough. They want one that's on the margins that they can call us white fragile for being upset about. If we agree about something being hard racist, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit if there's an obvious one. They give a shit if there's one where they can sit there and say, hey, you're doing rhetorical prophylaxis, not accepting that this isn't actually racism that you're culpable for, and you in San Francisco should pay $5 million a family for... I can't believe that, man. Not a family, a person.
That's crazy. But also with this clip here, Dan, you are imposing your social construct onto everyone. This is what you are doing. Mm-hmm. You have a social construct. You've adopted it as a faith, as an article of faith, and here you are imposing it on us, pretending like you're doing data and science,
and announcing that you're got the right to do it because you're an expert class. You're an expert managerial class expert.
Well, they do this thing where they pretend that calling something a social construct is such a mic drop. But there are a lot of things that are socially constructed that they love, like the entire professionalism, like all of your college degree. That's socially constructed. The learning that you did, that's all socially constructed. It's just, what does your piece of paper mean? Nothing to the 15th century Persians or whatever. They don't give a fuck about your doctorate. They're socially constructed. Now you can't. Me saying that doesn't mean anything because I don't think that social construction means meaningless, but they all seem to think that that's just a mic drop. Gender is a social construct. Okay, no, it isn't. All right, but if you're talking about gender roles, which are partially socially constructed, that still doesn't mean it's nothing.
Your view of gender is the social construct. Gender is not a social construct. The way you talk about it, interpret it, and insist upon it, that's the construct.
Yep. 100%.
Special accommodations differently than how they did it anciently. Second main way is that while anciently it was just about making special accommodations in order to extend access to power and resources to those marginalized, minoritized, or oppressed groups, today we've added to that the idea that these systemic power asymmetries can be deconstructed and the system can be reconstructed so that that access is already built in. So
we can deterritorialize and re-territorialize.
That idea isn't in the Bible.
Deconstruct and reconstruct. We can do current day bullshit academics to this stuff and pretend like it's what the end goal of it was all along. Because we've got our eyes correctly on the eye at the end of history because we're the Gnostics who have this all figured out.
And also, like, I mean, that's kind of the whole, like, mark, like the kingdom of God on earth.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. Like, so they did believe that you could upend the systems of oppression. That's what the kingdom of God is. You dipshit.
We are extending the scope of our attempts to correct these systemic power asymmetries. Now, the first main way I see it as still the same is that it is fundamentally about addressing and mitigating social inequalities built into the system and the social.
That's what the Bible's about. It's fundamentally about addressing inequalities that are inherent in the system, built into the system. No, that's current day social justice. That's 1992 to present social justice.
Aren't there like
Jesus said the poor will always be with you?
Aren't there like verses that talk about like how you should have slaves and shit like that? Like, I don't know.
He says that. Remember,
I know. He says a whole bunch of things where like, oh, the Bible
does condone slavery.
Yeah. So like, what do you mean it's about social justice?
Instability that arises from them. Second main way I see it as the same is that the faith communities ostensibly concerned for social justice are still filled with people trying to renegotiate the scope of their responsibilities to social justice. I don't see a rhetorical difference between
they're trying to be they're doing continued moral panics that are not different than the satanic moral panics and all those other moral panics. Like, it's just continued moral panicking from the same communities. Which is why I say it's a continuation of the Puritanism. Like, you guys are actually just the fulfilled Hegelian version of the Universalist Unitarianism direction of that religion that Nietzsche himself said would cut the God out of it and just turn into the slave morality. But just predictions from that guy.
Barking at Jesus, yeah, well, who's my neighbor? And barking at Twitter, yeah, well, Jesus never said that it was appropriate to use the organs of government to take care of the poor. Both are examples.
He never said use the organs of government to take care of the poor either. That's like there he is right there doing the exact same thing in the other video that he says it's plausible that my thing's real because it's just not there in that Bible at all. You know,
of people
Jesus
who do not want to be.
Didn't say for the IRS to hire a bunch of people with guns to enforce tax law. Jesus didn't say that.
I'm pretty sure that render unto Caesar what is Caesar's actually means that the government should own the means.
What? Rhetorical prophylaxis. Rhetorical prophylaxis.
I'm pretty sure that what he meant by that, and I feel like any other interpretation that's just a renegotiation of the Bible, but the render unto Caesar what is Caesar's is clearly an instruction that the government ought to own the means of production. Do not renegotiate the Bible. Anything else is a renegotiation. In fact, there is certainly nothing to disprove the notion that the government should own the means of production, biblically speaking. Anything else is rhetorical prophylaxis.
Responsible for helping others and are trying to rationalize away the demands of social justice so they don't have to take care of other people.
So they don't have to. So you want to make it so they have to. Like, I am more than positive. I try to not get into what they actually meant in that Bible, but I'm more than positive that the concept wasn't force people into caring for other people.
Well,
it was to change your heart into want to care for other people.
Yeah. Well, and Mr. Rationality, define your terms, guy. Here, like, define to me what you mean by care for other people, right? Because a lot of your types would condone
Dan condones slavery too while he records his vids on his MacBook Pro.
Oh yeah.
Troy says this takedown of McClellan is brutal. I had no idea he was this bad. It's like a yeah.
Well, he's been filling up a lot of our time lately.
Yeah, we've been circling around it and kind of just teasing him, but we've never fully like gotten into like some of the details. And there's more details. One of the problems with it is like I think he's astroturfed a little bit. Like all of his videos from the beginning of time, I started seeing him real early on TikTok, and they just started kind of funneling to me, and I didn't subscribe to him or anything like that. And I can't get away from his videos now, and I freaking hate him. Like, come on, another Dan McClellan video. I don't want to watch this. And then I watch it and go, ugh. But if like we really like bit the bullet and sat there and like picked out every single one of them, I'll throw anybody a bone. He's a smart guy, and a lot of times he's got little tidbits of information that are interesting. Like, oh, that's interesting to know that was about that in this time frame or something like that. And it'd be great if he was that guy who really was pulling off some sort of like neutral general information about what he knew about something, but he always so obviously steers it into his politics, and it's that whole thing of like what the Lynn does too. Like, there's a level of it is like, I would leave y'all alone if you just said, hey, we're hyper biased this direction and I'm going to be pushing for this. Excuse my extreme bias here, you know. But the fact that they try to pretend that they're Bible scientists and empathy scientists, that's what was the term last week. These empathy scientists and Bible scientists, that's what drives me nuts. You know, you're dickheads like we're dickheads. That's what we all are, is dickheads. There's Marty. Marty said she's not going to be on, so we're going to get into the woke stuff. Because, Alicia, Jerry, you can do a Jordan Peterson and a Dan McClellan. Were you doing a Dan McClellan?
Kind of. I was just speaking really softly into I'm picking up on the words that he says, so it was more like my voice didn't sound a whole lot of it. You just got to get really close to the mic and you got to speak really softly. But there's not a good way to. He doesn't have a very distinct voice. He uses distinct verbiage. That's the only way to impersonate McClellan.
And you got to like write something out, like long written out sort of thing, and pretend like it's coming off the top of your head. So like constantly look away from it.
You can watch him reading that shit.
Yeah, pretend like it's coming off the top of your head while you're sitting there doing a very, very prepared thing. Let's see here. Oh, watch this. Wait for this. Talks amongst yourselves. I'll give you a subject. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir is neither Mormon nor tabernacle. Discuss. That was like an actual thing that Mike Myers said on Coffee Talk on Saturday Night Live. Speaking of which, my brother, I won't go into the whole details of why he called me, but he's been doing a choir out of BYU's men's chorus. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but on here. But Jim Bennett once lit into me because I made fun of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, saying that they weren't as good as they used to be. And from the choir, I don't think I did talk about it on here because I told him that I'd let it go. But then he went out being like all super pious guy on Twitter. So it's coming back up. But from the choir, last conference, sitting in the choir, he told me or somebody else to suck our mom's balls or something like that because we told him that the choir is not as stringent as it used to be. But my older brother, who's a choir guy, just said the same thing yesterday, and unprovoked, I didn't even ask him. He said, "Nah, that choir is not what it used to be."
Jim Bennett is funny as hell because like I've never seen somebody so like hell bent on looking like pious and like the good guy, but so fucking unable to do it. Like he is so thin skinned.
Yeah,
and that's the only thing is because like, you know, like I don't fault people for throwing in insults. I will fault you if all you do is insult.
Kevin said he called me a fucktard from conference, and he took a picture of himself from the Tabernacle Choir seat and said, "Oh, this choir's awesome, we're the best," and called us those names and stuff. And I told him I'd leave it alone, except then he got on Twitter and got all pious, saying like, "Why is everybody being so outrageous in their language?" So all bets are off with that one, but. Here's the secret trick. You want to know why the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is not as good as it used to be? Because they started selecting for spirit over talent. And I think one of the reasons they did that is because back in the day, they had all sorts of probably sneaky sexual harassment and sex things happening, traveling all around the world. And so then instead of like selecting for who's the bestest of the bestest, they started selecting for who's going to not cause us problems here. And that came from my brother's mouth, who's very much a choir insider. He's singing for a choir in Utah County right now. I wanted to show you guys one thing. Look how dumb this is. Oh goodness. Where's the Facebooks? Oh man, I wish I had like double screens. I need to get like a good setup to actually do some.
You could just hook it up to your TV. That's what I have. I got a monitor and I got like a TV that we didn't really use anymore. So it doesn't look very great, but it's.
Why am I so dumb? I should have even thought about that. Whoa, man, I'm a dummy.
The other thing we got to work on is we got to make like little section headers, you know, like Kyle Dunnigan has. You know, where animals on animals or all that. Where like,
those are clip channels, and they usually have like some outside editor come and make clips. And I've
no. I mean like that. Like we actually play the card. You know, like that's things like we could make a thing about McData and have his dumb face, and like every time he does something stupid, have a.
And we could do fake ads. I'm Caitlyn Jenner, And if there's anyone that knows how to get rid of a useless dick with salt and pepper hair, it's me.
What's that? I already forgot the name where he makes the Joker's like Caitlyn Jenner names one of her kids. He's like, "Do you even know about him?" And I'm like, I didn't. I never knew. Like, it's like apparently like there's the unknown Kardashian.
Watch this Backyard Professor. Watch this. I'm not getting into the details of the thing. Just watch this.
Okay.
Well, it's slow going.
I now seek for and invite the assistance of the Holy Ghost as I speak with you about essential spiritual truth.
Okay, let's see it.
Oh, God.
Everybody's copying it now.
What does he say? Does he give? What's his analysis like after?
You want the analysis? I was just pointing out that everybody's copying the Dan McClellan.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that guy. He's on Mormonism Live.
He's doing a bunch of small videos now and copies the Dan McClellan. And
dude, that's funny.
Did you actually want the analysis of that thing?
I mean, I'm kind of curious. Is it typical bullshit, or does he actually give something meaningful?
No, he actually, because he's a kind of a religious guy, so he gives in some stuff about like spiritual gifts or actual spiritual gifts from the actual Christians, because the Christians are spiritual gifts type stuff. So it's like he's got the truth about spiritual gifts.
Huh.
Let's see. So Marty said she's not able to make it, so we can get into the wokey definitions of the wokes.
One of the commentators says Bible scientist reminds me of Bible salesman.
Yeah, pretty much. First, I want to show you guys this video. This is going to be a fun video. This will cleanse the palate. Hold on a second here. Palate cleanser, just to take your mind off of difficult things in the world. Real quick, I just want to have you think about.
Wait, how do you like that Uncle Val's, Jared?
Oh, I think it's like my favorite gin now. That's not what I'm drinking. I'm just drinking water right now, but
yeah,
it's all gone. But I think it might be my favorite gin.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one.
Get under shelter. Free. Don't run. Obey your air raid warden.
Yeah.
Or stay home.
Dude,
just reminding you how to be.
TikTok is so much better than 2023 TikTok.
Just reminding you of how to be in case of a nuclear bomb.
Obey your air raid warden.
Well, this is pre-nuke. This is regular air raid.
Oh yeah, it's just a. I don't know if they're British, so maybe it's like firebombing stuff.
In the 90s, I stole from my grandpa's basement a little pocket-sized book that was published by the American Atomic Commission, or whatever it was called at the time, called "You Can Survive a Nuclear Attack," and that was full of shit.
Yeah. Obey your air raid warden.
I mean, I love that they're smoking. Like, that's the best part. It's like, usually, like, they're like, don't smoke outside because, you know, a sniper can spot a cigarette butt from 3 miles away, or whatever they say. But that's cool. Yeah, but like, I don't know what happened to it, but I used to have it was a little thing that was issued by the federal government called "You Can Survive a Nuclear Attack." And the one thing that was really interesting is that, like, it's totally downplayed the effects of radiation. It was like, radiation, schmadiation, you know, like, this is pre-downwinders. My dad was a downwinder.
Really?
Yeah, he was in St. George some of the times when they were testing.
That was the same
Arizona.
place. People claim, what's his name? John Wayne got cancer from that very same area.
Yeah.
Did you look at like people will show me pictures at work of like the contamination controls that like nuclear sites used to have. It would be like smoking cigarettes and eating in like this like big contaminated area or whatever, and like we can't smoke or eat within like certain designated areas, and we got like a respirator that purifies the air, and we tape it to our shit that we're wearing.
What do we got here?
Did you see this? The girl. Okay,
I heard about it. I haven't watched it.
Hold
on a second. Charlie's book.
Consider themselves very liberal, and probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, you know, when we talk about traditional,
what does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. Sorry, it's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Yeah, look,
it's not. I mean, it is, but it isn't.
Yeah, so of course that whole entire thing like became like bread tube. Look, they can't define woke. Although, like, you know, you could ask any one of them to try to define fascism.
Wow, who is this Nazi?
People have a hard time defining woke without accidentally saying they want to be able to hate minorities and not face any consequences. But that's not much different than how Dan like talks to us when, you know.
Because that's like I said at the top of the show. Like, no, woke is critically conscious, capital C, critically conscious. You can look it up. There's decades of writing about it. Like, the people who gave us the word woke, that's what they meant. We know that. There's a history of all of this.
Yeah. Well, she said that she like actually had a book that even has like a chapter on woke. She kind of just went to
I gotta say, like,
death. Somebody
like,
said
that's embarrassing for that lady. Like, that's really embarrassing. You should have been prepared for that question. You know, like, for hell's sake, you of all people,
especially like you should know
you
that
should be able to give a 30-second definition that
one of the hot takes that people think they can do now. So you define woke, and they think they'll catch.
Yeah, no, they're going to take that forever, and it won't matter. Like that, there are 10 trillion Twitter responses like woke saying like, no, here it is, here's the link, here's the thing, here's the history, but they'll just say, you just want to hate minorities.
This is part of the strategy of critical social justice, aka woke activists, to protect their ideology and worldview from criticism. They want to prevent us from giving their ideology a name. It's like one of the first episodes Kevin and I did was calling it kind of like the nothing or something like that. But
yeah, that episode was neat. It made me go back and rewatch that movie.
Yeah, and they don't like it giving it a name. They as soon as they give it a name, then something you can challenge and take on. Then he gets into the stuff. He kind of repeats the Jordan Peterson thing about the camouflage against the herd type stuff, which is kind of
a total non sequitur. But I saw the zebra. But did you guys see the news earlier this week that police in Ohio shot a zebra after it went nuts and bit its owner, and then rammed the police car?
No.
And then it turns out that in Ohio you can have a zebra as a pet.
Well, I kind of figured after like the Tiger King,
where Tiger King was.
After the Tiger King stuff, I'll believe people can believe any which thing, But
just because the story is like, I mean, it's not funny because the guy was fairly seriously injured. Because like he called the police. Apparently, like the 911 call, he said my zebra bit my arm off. And the BBC article was careful to say like, well, his arm was still attached and he's recovering at the hospital, But then, like, the funny part is they say, like, the police showed up and the zebra started ramming the cop car.
Oh, my gosh.
Zebra lives matter. That zebra was half black, so that was...
Well, one of the things that's interesting about that is, like, so this whole stuff comes up during the...
Now we're going on a thing where, like, the cops are like, is it black? Is it white? I don't know if I can kill it or not.
I'll get in trouble. Yeah,
try to just shoot the black part of the zebra.
All this stuff came up like right in the same week that like Chris Rock had a special where he finally goes in on wokeness and all that sort of stuff. It's like the cat's out of the bag. The cat's out of the bag for like the general populace. Everybody knows what you're talking about. You don't even have to have like that specific generation.
I know. Well,
it's just out of control. Political correctness is a good enough definition now. Everybody's sick of it.
So that was a weird shift, right? I feel like there were a few people who kind of defended Will Smith when that happened. There were very few.
Yeah, there was some people who said he's defending his woman. You got
yeah. But it was pretty.
Oh, so that's back on the table now?
No, it's more so now. Now that
you offended the lady's honor, sir, I challenge you to a duel.
So now that Chris Rock came out with that special, now everybody's mad at him again. Like he's like, just leave it alone.
No, like that's the first thing he said about it since he gets to say something, and that was funny too. The way he ended that show was really, really funny.
With a literal mic drop, yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
also
pull
like,
up...
it's like that's the thing. It's like, I mean, look, it's racist, and like I wish that we could end with that whole narrative, but I also get it. And it's funny, but when he says, like, you know, like, he said, Will Smith never learned the lesson. Don't fight in front of white people. And then he drops the mic. That was brilliant.
Okay, here's some this week in race baity stuff, but some of it has to do with the Oscars type deal, and some of it is flip share these of Michelle Yeoh wins the Oscar for Best Actress, making history the first person who identifies as Asian to win the first person who identifies as Asian.
Wasn't there like some guy identifies as journalism? Is how I commented on that.
But wasn't there some guy in like the 80s who won it for the Killing Fields? Didn't he identify because he was Cambodian? That wasn't Asian. Like what?
Wasn't there some guy in like the 50s or 60s that won it for his portrayal of Genghis Khan or something?
No, I wanted to post that, but NPR will not allow you to post photographs.
That was the first thing I thought of when I saw that.
On the
but this
surface,
thing, the soccer player thing is annoys me because like I read the whole article, I went to the links, and I didn't dig in too much, but you can't find out what the guy said. Like this guy has been banned from Sports for Life for saying something to a black player on the internet.
Yeah.
What did he say? What is the thing we can't say? What is the kind of thing that will get you a lifetime ban? We're not going to tell you. Like, how fucking Orwellian is that?
Global TV begins production on Robin Hood series to reimagine the classic English folk hero as a black female. Holy mind blowing! We are renegotiating this. We are renegotiating it as a society. We've all decided that we all like this and want to do this. This other one on Michelle Yeoh. On the surface, everything, everywhere, all the time, all at once is a fantasy. But for NPR's Gary Duong, the movie parallels some of his real experience. Did you ever watch The Unsinkable Kimmy Schmidt? And she's got that boyfriend, and his name's like Dong. And she says her name, and he starts laughing. He goes, "Your name means penis."
Yeah. No, so this bugs the shit out of me because like they made this Oscars thing so much about like race and shit like that, and everybody's acting like it's this woke victory or whatever, and I'm just like, fuck off. I really like this movie. I liked it a lot. And
Ben Shapiro shot you down with his
Ben Shapiro's fucking like he's getting worse and worse on his takes about art. He used to be one of the few conservative guys that kind of understood certain art. Like even like
today he was talking shit on the 80s Willow, and I was like, I'm not having that. Like you can talk on the current day Willow, but the 80s Willow, you're up in the night, dude. That's good shit.
No, he's terrible.
What was wrong with the 80s Willow?
He hadn't seen it. He He just imagined it was shit.
Yeah, but they're making this whole thing. But did you watch the other guy's acceptance speech? The supporting actor that played her husband in that?
I didn't watch any of the Oscars.
So he had
to remember his name because you're racist.
I can't remember his name because it's a Vietnamese name, and it was like a really touching speech where he like teared up and talks about how my story started out as a refugee on a boat coming from Vietnam, and now I won an Oscar. This is the American dream. Like he seemed like a really grateful person.
I'm surprised they didn't play him off for saying to the world.
I've got his name right here.
I came to the white supremacist nightmare, the systemically oppressive nightmare of America, and had a successful life and a career, and I'm really happy with it.
I want to know how the white guys didn't get canceled for that, because the director, one of the directors, was a white guy. They cast this dude to play a Chinese character, and he's Vietnamese. How is that not currently racist?
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say about Sopranos. All of the Italians are played by Italians. All of the Jews are played by Jews. When is The Sopranos going to be canceled?
The Sopranos, they did try to cancel them. They got really mad at the negative portrayals of Italians in that a bunch of times. It was one of the first things that really started getting into that.
There's a whole episode where there's a whole conversation about it.
Yeah, there's later episodes too. There's later episodes where like the smart, snooty therapists are all sitting around talking to each other about I don't know about what this looks like for us Italian Americans. They get into it. David Chase kind of rips it apart from inside the show. It's pretty great. There's a lot of weird meta stuff in that, so that's pretty interesting.
I have a slight connection to David Chase in that my good friend's father was in film school with David Chase. And in fact, David Chase wrote a cop drama in the 70s and named a character after my buddy's dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I found that actor's name. His name is it's a Short Round. That's his name.
That's right. It was Short Round. I remember
that. Get woke, go broke. Silicon Valley's bank top woman executive LGBTQ activist gets targeted for lender failure.
So you had a bunch of queer women running your bank, and you still found a way to be evil and steal everyone's money. How strange.
Maybe I'll
it's
toss
almost
one to...
as if your identity doesn't say anything about what kind of person you are.
Maybe I'll toss one to CRT here because, like,
trying to protect my white supremacy.
Maybe what's going on is like maybe they can double down into their critical race theory or their critical what can they even call it, gender female theory here, because these are just a bunch of women. But they maybe they knew the thing was failing, and so they dumped it off to these guys' leadership at the very end to pin it on them. And maybe this is just another way to reify that horrible racistness and pin it on them.
Man, it's like you read Derek Bell.
Yeah.
You know how to do this game.
Their faces at the bottom of the well. They're just faces. They're always at the bottom. Even when they're on top, they're just put there as scapegoats. Oh.
Well, I was going to say earlier, I forgot to mention about...
I could write that book and get a PhD, and maybe I'll like reference something from cognitive science, and I'll call myself a cognitive scientist.
As I was going to say earlier, to beat on the horse some more, because it was in my head earlier and I forgot, is that Dan McClellan is to rhetoric as a mechanic is to poker. He's stacking the deck, and he's rigging the game, and he's consciously doing it.
Yep, 100%. Mormon Stories podcast. President Nelson got the Martin Luther King Award someplace, and they compared him to Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln. What's kind of funny is like in woke ways, every single one of these names have been taken down too. So it's like, you can pick the side of like, well, you don't want to be on that list, but there's also the
actually, John Delisle, Gandhi's a pretty problematic figure in that he used to test his sexual resilience by sleeping naked with his great nieces. Is that?
Martin Luther King raped a bunch, or was there?
He liked to give,
the president said rape, and then it was a bunch of
weird
sexual stuff.
No, Gandhi had a weird thing about enemas, and giving enemas to prepubescent girls and weird shit. Lord. Gandhi had some weird shit for sure.
Nelson Mandela pulled some shit too before he ever got arrested.
Here's the thing:
that dude's no innocent.
If we're going by just woke shit, I doubt you're gonna really find any skeletons in Russell M. Nelson's closet. Like
all he's done is give millions to the NAACP.
I don't like him very much. He's dorky, and I think he's like really sort of averse, like risk-averse business practice type guy. But he's a lot of good stuff, right? Like
he's managerial class.
He's pretty impressive as a heart surgeon, even, right? Didn't he help develop that thing? Didn't he help develop the thing that helped pump your heart while you're
he
under heart surgery? Like,
man, that brings back memories there, Forrest.
I loved Willow, man. Willow was great. Shapiro doesn't know his ass from his face on that.
That's super.
But I agree with Jared. Shapiro's not. Actually, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't turn to Shapiro on. I think Shapiro can kind of give you like a general idea of the news of the day, and here and there some other little tidbits of information. Other than that, he's not the greatest like source.
His cultural his comments on art and culture are really stupid.
I wish he would stop trying to make jokes.
When he complained about the Last of Us episode that didn't have any zombies, it's like, you dumb shit. Do you not understand what stories are? Like, it's not about the zombies. It's about something else. The zombies.
Speaking of that, do you recall that something was absent from the show?
What?
They done took the temple out.
Oh yeah, they totally did that. Those that like, what kind of cowardice is that?
What sort
Like,
of
that
pressure?
was
Do
a
you, like, do you think they
deliberate
had pressure? Or
decision.
they took it out
Oh,
themselves.
it was
Like, why
it was
wasn't it there?
definitely deliberate because the degree to
Absolutely.
which they do
Well-
shot for shot remakes in this show.
I mean, I got the
Well, like,
screenshot
and-
right there because if you show this, the
like-
tabernacle's kind of right here. I mean, I've got the look.
Yeah.
Here's the tabernacle.
is
Here's the
highly-
church office building. So it should be in between the tabernacle and the church office building. So it should be like right
Yeah,
here.
it should be right there. But like, because in the movie, it like they move some stuff around. It's not like exact one for one, but it's roughly correct.
This,
You know, like,
I think
this
the tabernacle's
would be
moved
West
left
High.
here. Like the tabernacle would probably be over here.
Well,
and they
the other
moved
thing
it
is, like,
leftish.
if there's the ballpark would be closest to what they're looking at would be the West High field, which is actually like about a mile north of this vantage point, but you couldn't get the shot they wanted from there.
Yeah, I don't know what would be like above ground in that area to look at this stuff that way. Like that's flat area over right there.
Like this view is basically from the Gateway Mall.
Yeah.
If that was real life.
But what's kind of interesting about it, I mean, I know they did this all the time in the video game, and it's one of the tricks of the game. But there's so many different times where like you're going through a building and coming out of the building, you come into a huge new vista of a place. And like that's not how you come across vistas of cities. Is like through buildings, but I know that's video game magic. But when they come out right here, like I don't know. We should go try to find where that would be because it wouldn't be elevated. I don't think right there, but
no.
But yeah, the temple for sure would be right there. I think the tabernacle's moved over-ish because it should be like over
They
there.
also don't have nearly enough homeless people sleeping in that park.
Those giraffes are homeless, man.
I don't know, like, well, okay, that would be fun if I was a billionaire to produce a web series of what the Mormons in Last of Us done. Like, imagine, like let's do an episode where they go to Provo and all those gun nuts immediately took care of shit.
Yeah,
they still got a ward down
done.
there.
The Mormon Church is saving the Great Salt Lake.
We did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
Thank you so much.
But
Salt Lake Trip.
this lady who wrote for the
Larson.
Tribune, is the one who got them to do it by criticizing them some months ago.
Yeah, no, like that's just like oh look what I did. I made the water with my journalism.
That's kind of one of the things he said is like when the Salt Lake doesn't kind of go that direction, they're going to say, well, it's because we saved it, you know.
Yeah.
But my bet still stands. I'm not saying the Salt Lake can't go bad. It's just not that stupid Greta Thunberg style time frame John Larson gave of it.
How dare you?
Which she did put that. Did you see she deleted a thing this week that she predicted the world would end by 2023 or something like that? And she sneakily deleted that tweet.
Wait,
this week.
She predicted that when she was like fucking 12 or something?
Yeah, 5 years ago. And then
that's a bold prediction.
Just this last week, she deleted the tweet.
Their predictions
I genuinely
are always
feel
shit.
bad for that girl. She is being used and abused.
Oh yeah,
I heard
her life has been stolen from her. Her identity has been stolen from her. Her future has been stolen from her. She's
our childhoods have been stolen from us,
and it's messed up.
I
mean,
should be in
that's the thing,
school. I should be in school.
Well, that's the other. Like, I mean, because the same thing goes for the transgender treadmill. These people are targeting autistics.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're absolutely targeting autistic people and abusing them.
Did you see that HBO documentary from a couple of years ago, The Trans Hood?
No.
I had never watched the whole thing
I
before,
didn't.
but I caught a last part of it where this woman was the one that took her son to like gay church or whatever, and like they announced their pronouns and shit like that, and the kid gets up there and he's too embarrassed to say that he's a girl or whatever. But then in the end of the show, and I'm very shocked they didn't just cut this out. The mom did a complete 180. She just tells the kid, "Yeah, this was stupid. This was really dumb. I can't believe he's a boy. He's obviously a boy, and he thinks he's a boy. He just liked the color pink, and I was dumb." I'm shocked they left it in there.
Did you guys see the news interview with Pierce Morgan? He ripped on Harry and Meghan. I did see that. That was a.
I haven't seen it. He's ripped on them quite a bit, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's come out in a lot of different episodes. Pierce, I mean, because Pierce has some insider information.
Because like I remember a few years ago when the right was absolutely shitting on Piers Morgan, because I don't even remember what it was.
Because of Shapiro.
Oh,
Shapiro was the one who like called him out for his gun control.
Yeah, they had a gun control.
Oh, that's right.
They had a makeup they made.
Oh, that's right. Because that's the thing is like I know that Piers Morgan has said some really stupid things for sure. But yeah, like it's interesting that like he's honest. No, that's the thing is like I have to say like he's honest and he's consistent. He corrects his mistakes. Like good for him.
Yeah, I just don't. There's certain things that he's not a. He's open about his biases, so I get less angry about it. But some of his biases are crap, and some of those biases are artistic descriptions. Like he's not somebody I'd turn to for, because actually, strangely enough, some really kind of shit middle of the road movies he'll give good reviews to, you know. But Pierce Morgan, he doesn't like guns, so he hate him. Pierce Morgan is a dipshit about guns, but I mean that's kind of just. Nowadays, that's almost kind of just European about guns.
Yeah, I know.
I remember a few years ago, like my friend she married an Englishman, and he came over to America for the first time. And I remember trying to explain to him, because he's just like, "You don't need guns," and I'm like, man, like I don't know how to tell you the last 400 years of American history, but like, there's no taking that bag. There's no putting that cat back in that bag. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. Like. America is a gun place. Did
you guys see something about teachers building bulletproof rooms for school shootings? No, but why would that?
Like, well, they have like, yeah, well, they have this.
Oh, so they could run into the room.
Well, they have this thing. It flips. It's like a wall that's attached to the walls, and it has slides on the ceiling, and you flip it out of the corner, and it makes this bulletproof wall for. I don't know.
Oh man, I don't know. That's great.
Stop trying to claim that this was ever anything like this, and we're showing
that's their favorite
Mrs. Doubtfire and Tootsie and all that sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's their favorite argument to go to now. They'll be like, "Oh, you guys don't like drag, but you watch Bugs Bunny dress up like a woman." Yeah, it was ridiculous when he dressed up like a woman. We laughed at it because we were supposed to laugh.
I grew up with Dame Edna. My parents sort of think I liked Dame Edna. I thought she was funny. And if Dame Edna was reading to kids, if it was Dame Edna, I honestly wouldn't have a problem with it. You know, like zero.
Because in every one of these stories, like it's somebody trying to fool people. All of these people were consciously playing a role. That is not what queer theory says.
Well,
not at all.
But at the same time, too, if it was these guys, if it was this reading to kids or whatever, I'd be fine. That's funny, fine, whatever. That's cool.
I know. I'm like, that's what I keep saying. I'm like, let's compromise, okay? You can have Mrs. Doubtfire read books to kids, and maybe don't let that unicorn jackass wag his barely covered up dick around in front of a little girl or boy.
I'm sure some of them out there actually kind of are like this and dress like this, but at the same time too, as James Lindsay point out, they have like a charter, and it says in their charter is to be provocative.
It's based on a critical theory paper called Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yeah,
like they lay it out.
They want to be provocative.
They sexualize children. That's the goddamn goal.
And their goal is to, and this is one of the things Dan McClellan doesn't want to admit about that word, but most of the times the goal is to ignite rhetorical prophylaxis. That they're trying to ignite that conflict there. They're trying to create the tension and the anger. They want that to come out.
Tanner's down here. This is great. Or Zelf. Whatever, whoever tweeted it from them. This is one of my favorite tricks that they love to do is they say, "No, you." Like, because it's all just, no matter what it is, you're the one sexualizing people. We could have like a competition where you're trying to just spread your butthole on stage in public and people are judging your butthole and children are allowed to come and be like, well, it's spreading your butthole out in front of people is not inherently sexual. Prove to me why you think it's inherently sexual. You're the one sexualizing it. You're a pedo, aren't you? Oh my God, you think spreading your butthole is sexual.
Yeah. But we saw on Jacob's Facebook page that he's trying to take them on and have like a direct argument with them, and they probably won't take it up. But I would love to see that. I mean, that's the thing I like about Jacob and the Midnight Mormons that you just didn't have 20 years ago, and why I like him and encourage them and try to be friends with them is they will go and talk with people, even people who are critical and mean and whatever of them. They actually interact. And Delenn and Larson, all those guys, I'd have way less of a problem with them if they didn't get all insular and stop acting with people and start acting like they just had to protect people from other opinions. This was in New Yorker. It might have been a joke. I don't even know because I couldn't click because it was like behind a paywall. But it looks like the New Yorker's into physiognomy. Some scientific diagrams that will help you to spot the signs that someone is about to waste your time before it actually happens. Common anatomies of disappointing men.
What's that discontinued science where they judge somebody's
physiognomy,
violent tendencies? That's the skull one?
Phrenology. Phrenology.
Phrenology, that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
But physiognomy is not that much different. Physiognomy is have you seen that Speed Read Dan guy? He's been on Midnight Mormons. Do you know who he is? Speed Read Dan, he's got this Twitter file where his whole entire thing is he thinks he can kind of like judge and look back on people in history, and just from their appearances, you can judge books by their cover. So he's like a big physiognomy guy, and he's actually a friend with the Midnight Mormons. I think you usually can.
Yeah. The older I grow up, the more I'm like, yeah, you can usually judge a book by its cover.
I bet you on average there might be like a little bit of like a leaning towards the other. And he actually like blew up this a couple weeks ago because he talked about Mormon girls getting too sexy in their dress, and that blew up all over the.
Well, I mean, because like there's a lot of stereotypes that are true and they work and they're funny. It's like, you know, like in my job, I'm in the alcohol sales world, and I always crack people up because I always say like, your mom drinks buttery Chardonnay. it's just how it works. Especially if you're white and waspy, your mom drinks buttery Chardonnay. It's just, I don't know why, but that's just how that works. That's okay.
So here's this thing. So he'll like look at the people, you know, give them like an archetype, caregiver archetype. He'll judge like their faces and their noses and types of stuff like that. This is the thread that blew up. It was hyper-hoaflation in Utah.
Yeah. Oh, that
the
was
last
funny.
outpost of chase Western civilization. What this means for the rest of us: social media fueled cunning cuckoldry, prurient psyops, and fertility failure. Sanctified saints or salacious smuts. A story of Molly Mormons falling from graces.
Dude, this is funny.
Oh gosh. But I mean, we watched those whole TikTok moms, whatever that was, them go down like the tanks and tubes and stuff. But I think this might be one of the TikTok mom girls or something. I don't know. But this blew up. People lost their minds that he dared talk about this stuff. But yeah, most of his stuff is physiognomy. I don't know how far down I have to get to where he gets in, like, he's gonna like look at somebody like this. Here it is. Amy Chua. I don't know who that is. You guys know who that is? Is that some like
I don't know.
No
Amy
idea.
Chua physiognomy analysis. This tried and true Tiger Mom. Oh, is she the Tiger Mom? That famous Tiger Mom, the one who wrote the book Tiger Mom stuff?
Just plug her into the search dizer.
This tried and
She's
true.
an American lawyer.
But I think she's a
No,
Tiger
that's the
Mom.
Tiger Mom. Yeah.
She wrote a book about like how Asian moms make their kids successful.
She's 60?
What? So, okay.
Jeez. That's breaking the Asian stereotype.
So let's see if his physiognomy reads maybe true or something like that. He says, this tried and true Tiger Mom is exactly what she claims to be. 99th percentile conscientiousness, low openness to experience, leans disagreeable, moderate extroversion, higher neuroticism, super OCD, very legal. But the thing is, like, you know enough about her popularly that you're not just going off of like.
Yeah, that's just doing a hot reading.
Yeah,
that's like Teresa Caputo, like somehow divining that Gwyneth Paltrow had a dead brother or something. Like, how did she know? Oh my god.
Whoopi Goldberg, despite what the internet says, there's no way this woman is an ENFJ. She's probably an ESTP, warrior auxiliary, orphan,
Myers-Briggs. That's another thing that annoys me. That anybody takes Myers-Briggs personality.
Myers-Briggs was originally developed by Carl Jung, and Carl Jung himself said it was a parlor trick. He didn't say it was real. He said this is just a game.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I just know like how many hiring departments and how many companies take that shit seriously. That's scary.
I get annoyed by people who like know what the acronym is right off the bat. Like, because
I don't.
Oh, you're a total INFP. I don't know what the fuck that is.
10 years ago, when I was on dating sites, I saw it everywhere, and I was like, "What the fuck are they talking about?
This is that OnlyFans Mormon mom. He's going. I don't know if he did the physiognomy of her. Anyway, he's got. If you want to dig deep and go back into stuff and see some wild reads, he's got all. Oh, that's the TikTok
that?
mom. What's that?
So what do the data say about being Mormon and doing OnlyFans? Like, is there any data in the Bible written down, new or old, DNC, any of that condemns?
What's your rhetorical prophylaxis that says that Mormon girls are discouraged from doing this kind of shit?
I am more than positive Dan, the other Dan, could make that all feasibly possible and good and fine and dandy for.
Dude, what if
Gandhi? Is he doing physiognomy of Gandhi?
It would do that thing where he makes it not impossible.
Innocent auxiliary explorer demon hermit shadow sage. Okay,
that's you just say that like before, like looking at their face or something like that. Like,
yeah.
George Washington physiognomy analysis: insane amount of integrity, strikingly conscientious. But you're not really. You can't. You're too preloaded. You're too preloaded with
this
your.
This is tarot card shit. This is.
But you know too much about the person already to. Russell Brand physiognomy, and you gotta show them like nobodies and know what they are.
Like this Abe Lincoln guy looks like somebody who would want to emancipate.
They have done actual studies on this where they show like a bunch of random pictures and then they mix in a serial killer, and to see if anybody can spot them. And no,
well, that's one of the areas that they try to claim is the most one. Like if you look at serial killers over time, there's something about all of them or something like that. But
no, there's nothing about any of them.
Well, that's that guy, and he's been on Midnight Mormons a bunch of times.
It would be fun if we could like get the weird world of Speed Read Dan doing his weird parlor trick on Dan McClellan, and then which one is that? And then Dan McClellan doing the weird parlor trick back. Which religion?
Tarot cards, probably. I don't know.
Oh, that or physiognomy.
Or the int F type stuff.
All the guys in the lobster group love tarot cards and like, well, it's a good thing for archetypes or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean archetype? Like it's supposed to.
I don't know what they mean.
Isn't it supposed to predict your future? I've never done tarot cards. Like I thought it's supposed to.
I thought it was. I don't know.
It's supposed to be like insight. I remember my sister was into it for a while.
It's just one of those stupid things I never did. Even as a Mormon, I remember them. Like people talking about doing Ouija boards and shit. Like, I'll never do that. That freaks me out. Like, no, it's not fucking real.
Yeah, no, I in 1992 I saw the Nova special Secrets of the Psychics, all about James Randi, and I all of what like little threads of belief I had in ESP, tarot, psychics, all that crap. James Randi's like, it's a trick, and he showed you how to do it, and I was like, oh, okay, I see now. That's a trick. I never believe that anymore.
One on the N?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, dude, we don't know what tarot cards are.
So 10 years ago, when we were kind of fans of Skeptic's Guide to the Universe and all that sorts of stuff, I actually kind of thought the future of stuff, because we knew that just because people became atheists didn't mean they stopped believing weird stuff. But I honestly thought the whole future of it was just going to be taking down stuff like crystals and taking down stuff like that.
Water dowsing.
Water
that stuff was fun.
All the what was that thing about like one drip of the thing in water? What was that called?
Homeopathy.
Is that all homeopathy? I thought there was another.
Yeah, no, homeopathy. Like that's because I was just saying today that I think
Myers-Briggs
might be the single biggest scam in the history of the world. Like the greatest con ever. Yeah.
But we used to just.
What's the greatest con? Homeopathy.
Yeah, no, because like I mean, and that's things. It's one of those things where like when I would tell people like what homeopathy really is, they didn't believe me because of how completely stupid and obviously a scam it was. But the claim of homeopathy is that it's pure water, and that's what makes it medicine.
Yeah, I remember.
That's the foundation of the claim is that
was it James Randi or Michael Shermer who did the TED Talk where he brought like a whole like couple bottles of it on stage and drank all of them. It was James Randi.
Like he eats 2 bottles worth of homeopathic sleeping pills, on stage.
Oh,
but like
Troy got to
like
see James Randi. That's awesome.
Oh my gosh! Like that's I never
James
got
Randi's
to meet him, but he's like I I only.
It's funny to think that spoon bending.
They die.
That famous
James
spoon
Randi's a
bending guy
hero.
was a Utah, wasn't he? It was a Utah kid, wasn't it?
There was one guy. That was the page turning guy.
No,
the spoon bending guy was Jerry Geller.
That guy's name is James Heydrich. Was the Utah guy that could?
That couldn't do the page turning because of the static electricity from the lights.
No, it was just so funny because he had this thing where he would make pages turn magically, and James Randi is a brilliant magician, which means that he sees the simple answers like, oh, he's blowing on them.
Yeah.
So he just scattered packing peanuts around the things like, okay, if you're not using air pressure, you'll be able to turn the page without moving the
Isn't there
static
a
pieces. He's
new...
like, oh, the energy just left the room. Whoops.
Isn't there a new one of these personality test type things going around? I swear I've seen like Bill
What is
and those
Enya?
guys kind of start doing them. I think it's one of those personality test answers or something like that. But
you do one?
Is the Enya that new one with the Enneagram? Enneagram, yeah, that's the newer. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. There's like, but I don't know anything about Enneagram. I've only seen like people slowly kind of start a system of personality typing that describes patterns and how people interpret the world.
That looks strikingly like an astrological chart. Not gonna lie.
It better be like the Myers-Briggs test, in that every single time I take it, I get something different. But I always just so happen to be like the rarest personality type out there. It makes me feel real special.
So like one thing about
only
like
0.5% of people are INFPs.
Nobody takes a personality test to find out that they're bog standard ordinary.
So
like that's never the result.
The big five personality test. I mean, I think that one's kind of more rooted in some actual science because they can like show that they don't say that those 5 things are all encompassing of all personalities in the world. They just say these are things that we figured out we can measure, and there might be more things out there, but we can't measure them. But we figured out these 5 things are actually measurable. And so since we can measure them, we can get a little bit of an idea from that stuff. And they're still trying to discover more new ones or try to parse those out even better or something like that. But at least it's kind of based in some harder science. But Scorpio, I made the front page of Reddit one time making a comic. And I made one of those pho comics. You remember pho comics? They were really big in Reddit about 10 years ago. And the pho comic I made was about me being a James Randi type skeptic and getting around a girl and the girl wanting to talk to me about all this stuff like, oh, what's your sign? What's your this and that, the other? And everything I did was just be like, well, actually those signs don't interpret this stuff. And actually those a couple thousand years ago, the signs even shifted and every single one of my things was like given some, actually description of it. And then sooner or later at the last picture, some guy checks in and goes, yeah, I'm a Scorpio. And the girl goes, I'm a Scorpio too. And I'm a Scorpio. And they run off and start making out together. And then I just sit there like, at the end of it. And that little comic, it made the front page of Reddit. And I actually made an ex-Mormon comic that made the front page of Reddit too. Way back when, like 10 years ago. But these were pho comics. But, can you hear me? I unplugged my thing. Okay.
I remember that comment that made front page of Reddit. Man, that was back when Reddit didn't suck.
Yeah. I could probably dig those up. Maybe I'll try to dig them up for next time because it'd take too long to dig them now. But I mean,
I brought it up before, but there's been a few times in my life that like Covington kids, Reddit had that whole story broken top to bottom inside of an hour. And it took weeks. It took until the lawsuit for New York Times to not even retract, but to correct,
Oh yeah.
Like,
they had they had all of the footage right away.
Yeah. No, the other one that's like where it's like it pissed me off where like that there was any debate about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation.
Oh yeah.
Reddit had it all inside of an hour. They had all the video. They had named the people. They had their backgrounds. They had put multiple videos together and created the timeline inside of an hour. And and then a year later, Anna Kasparian's like, he crossed state lines to hunt black people.
These are the pho comics, and so they're just kind of just templates of faces, and then I just put words in with them. But yeah, one of them was about you lose out on women if you go around being too much of an autistic corrector about metaphysical things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe that's different nowadays. I have no idea.
Some girl, do you believe in true love? I do not.
Yeah, don't do that. You got to say stuff like, you got to be like, yeah, I'm a Scorpio. Oh, yeah. Well, you got to go along with it.
Yeah, I'm a Scorpion too. Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
I don't know if I got much more, and we done hit the 2-hour mark.
Oh, I was just taking this Enya test.
Are you going to find out if you're an Enneagram? Is Enneagram real stuff? I don't know much about it. Or
I don't know anything about it until Forrest.
Is it more int J? I've heard it. I've heard people talk about it.
Seems pretty cheesy because it's just agree and disagree, and like this question, 38 out of 50. When you're at a party, you prefer to talk to people you already know. I don't know.
Who doesn't do that?
That already reminds me of the Scientology personality test. Like one of the serious questions, like, do you ever whistle just for the fun of it? Like that's an actual question from.
Wow, I'm so unique.
Here's that. You shared this with me. I didn't pull it up earlier, but here's the actual paper that for your proof of what you're talking about earlier. JAG Pedagogy: The Playful Practice of Queer Imagination in Early Childhood.
In what year?
2021. But there was some older one that was published.
There's some older ones too, yeah. But that's The conservatives did not make that up. These guys did.
These materials often provide creative provocations to inspire inquiry and learning.
But because you mentioned earlier,
within the context of the Drag Queen Story Hour, the visual style of the queen serves as a provocation that invites inquiry into normative fashion and embodiment. So it's there to provoke. It's not.
It's today or very recent. James Lindsay did a bullet on what he called mid-level violence, and that's talking about the exact thing like you mentioned earlier. And that's what Drag Queen Story Hour is, where it's like it's right in the middle. Because like if you do nothing, they win. If you say something, they say, "Oh, what do you hate? You hate gays?" Like it's the point. It's like it's right down in the middle. Like they're not flat. They're not waving their dicks and slapping the kids with them. Not yet.
Or says he doesn't know if that's real or not.
Much provocation.
But they're fun little things and sometimes has interesting insight. I would also say don't shy away from it if you don't want to chase off women. Don't be too much of an autistic naysayer or skeptic about the world. It doesn't work.
That gets me in trouble at work all the time. No, there's like we work at a fucking nuclear facility, and there's people that are talking about their ghost stories all day, and
dude,
like
that's funny.
Yeah, they just talk about. And like, if I had a ghost story, like if I thought ghosts were real, I wouldn't just jump into that in front of other people that are gonna think I'm crazy.
You have to wear a dosimeter.
Yeah.
I have 2 ghost stories, and in both of them, I'm more than sure I was asleep and just I was asleep and kind of dreaming and just thinking I was awake there in my bed is what it was.
I have one UFO story.
What's that?
It was 2005. It was the afternoon. I was driving west in the afternoon, just leaving I-15 onto the 201 highway junction. And in the sky, I saw a shiny silver cigar-shaped object kind of floating in the air. And I was driving and I glanced at it and I glanced at it again. I'm like, what the hell is that? And then it was gone. And then I saw that there was an aircraft on the landing approach, and it was obviously just the morning sun hitting the airplane, and the glint was exactly right. And for a moment, I saw a silver cigar-shaped object. I went, oh, that's how people see cigar-shaped objects flying in the air. That's one way anyway. If you're at the exact right spot on the ground when the sun is glinting off of a silver airplane, that's what it looks like. That's my UFO story. It was an airplane.
We can do a big argument along like a couple years ago at work about dowsing rods. Because I offhandedly made fun of them, stupidly thinking that like everybody
believes
on the same page. Yeah, like nobody really believes in that shit. That's stupid. And every single person there except one other is me and one other guy who like they were like, oh no, they work. I was like, well, how do they work? I was like, well, it's
So I had a girl.
Stuff. I was like, it's magnetized toward fucking water. What are you talking
I had
about?
a gal come to my house with dowsing rods because she believed them. There was a couple women back in the day, and I would entertain them, and I would go to like these ghost things because they believed in this stuff, and I'd go with them. And I think I told her about it before here because like we went to this like old ghost town in Tooele out here or something like that because like they said there was like this graveyard that I don't know what would visit or something. And I showed up and there was all these people there because it was like a meet me thing. And I pulled out like a bag of Reese's Pieces and I started like throwing around the Reese's Pieces because I was going to attract the alien or something like that. They all got mad at me because I wasn't taking it seriously because I was doing the ET thing of throwing the Reese's Pieces around. But she brought dowsing rods over to my house and I took the dowsing rods and I said, is there anybody in the house? And then after a minute, I was able to like tilt the dowsing rods to my closet. And I said, there's a gay ghost in my closet. Over there. And the way she was is like she half believed it all and she got scared.
One of the things about ghost towns that cracks me up is because like they're like, oh, there was this town in the West where a few hundred people lived for 7 years. Like literally some of those ghost towns, that's what they're like. A few hundred, maybe 1,000 people lived there over a period of a few years. And they're like, oh, it's full of ghosts now. Like, shouldn't Istanbul just be like ghosts on top of ghosts on top of ghosts? Like literally, you shouldn't be able to see through the ghosts. Like that's been a major civilizational center for thousands of years, but nobody can see any ghosts. But if you go out to a shitty town in Tooele, oh, there they are. So silly.
Yeah. What is that place? There's a place out there that really is like an old Italian ghost town that you're not allowed to go out to.
Oh, there's a few.
It's called like Merkin or I don't know, something like that.
Mercer?
Something like that. And there really is like kind of like a creepy graveyard out there. But my friends and I back in the early days of the internet used to look up all the haunted spots in Utah, like Emo's Grave. You guys heard about Emo's Grave? And we went and did the Emo's Grave thing in the middle of Mercer. That's it. In the middle of the night, we went to Emo's grave and walked around Emo's grave backwards, chanting his name because he was like supposedly the first Satanist in Utah. And all the kids my age were like way into that. And it turns out years later, like look up the story and all he was like the first like alcohol brewer in Utah. And so people would call him like a Satanist. And all these kids were going to do this thing, acting like it was some satanic ritual thing. And it was actually just like some alcohol brewer guy. But
I think I know the Fisher Brewery. He's got his old mansion is down on 2nd South on the west side.
The Emo? Is that who that was? Nemo's Grave or whatever? You never heard about that?
I don't know about that one.
We had a dude in the mall, like the shopping mall, that he would show up to the shopping mall like every single day, dressed in this like his hair slicked back and this fancy suit with like a boutonniere and everything. Like he gets anytime you go to the mall, he was there, and he was this old guy. And the legend was that he went there on his wedding day, and his fiance died like while he was at the mall or whatever. And the sad part was like, he was nicknamed Chester the Molester, and I don't know why. And yeah, that's Kratos X on the wall. That's my wife got it for me.
What is this?
It's a book I read one time.
You just made that right now.
We just had like an alien experience, and
that movie was genuinely disturbing.
Really, I never saw it.
There's a scene in it that is burned into my mind that I watched as a kid. Like movies didn't normally bother me like that, but that movie stuck with me. Even though I never believed in ghosts or anything, just the imagery in it was so creepy.
Would Ben Shapiro like it? That wasn't Ghost one. That was Alien, right? It was
yeah,
like a guy who claimed he really did have an alien experience.
Well, and it's total bullshit. Like they came out and said they faked it.
Oh, really?
I think so. Like I mean, as I recall, it's it's one of those things where there's a lot of people involved in the guy. I remember a Skeptic's Guide talking about these guys.
I'm going to introduce everybody to somebody who I had no idea existed until this week. And he was brought up on Benjamin Boyce's podcast, and he was on the Distributus podcast just this week. But I had no clue this guy existed. and he's actually got like a Substack with like 44,000 people, and he's kind of like building like an offline black market for people and stuff. But then he's also not Desnat. He's like against Desnat at the same time, but he's a believing Mormon. The guy's name is Bennett's Phylactery, and that phylactery means like a Horcrux, and he's talking about some mummified head of some guy named Bennett from early Mormonism. But he's like a Mormon guy, and he's into like all the Mencius Moldbug stuff and all that stuff. And I don't think he knows anything about Midnight Mormons or Jacob Hansen or any of this sorts of stuff. But he's got like a huge weird internet following at the same time, and he's a total Mormon dissident right dude, but not into Desnat. What a weird guy right there. But he's an interesting fellow.
Strange. All righty, did we do it?
Yeah.
We certainly did. I think that's
goddamn. We
call,
didn't
I
even make
go
fun
walk
of
Charlie.
We didn't make fun of Sam, John Boleyn.
Yeah, well, part of
we
it.
didn't take any of the usuals.
I was less rowdy, so I'm in the middle of. I was doing. My dad's doctor suggested he do a 7-day fast. I said I'd do it with him.
Yeah. You're
so I'm
doing that?
Oh yeah, I'm on day 4. I just finished day 4.
God,
Jesus,
what do you feel like?
I feel pretty good. I've done it before. I've done fasts before.
Jared's
like,
trying to do 7 days of nothing but coffee and water.
Yeah, it's just coffee and water. And I'll do some. I'll take magnesium and potassium and sodium. Those are the things I'll take. But like I've done fasts before. I did like a 5-day, but this one has been easier. The first day was tough, and then after that, I've been fine.
I am on day 115 of a cut, and it's getting pretty close back to competitor levels, but that's what always happens. But that's nothing like 7 days of
I'm on year 42 of being a fat fuck.
I can't believe 7 days without, oh my gosh. But
yeah, I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah, but Delyn, I was just barely watching Delyn's most recent one with the lady who said her kids all died, and Flip said he's an ambulance chaser, and but I haven't listened to enough of it to know much about like what he said. He wasn't that interesting. We talked about Zelf, but Zelf and those guys should debate Jacob Hansen. But this is one of the things like why I say like Forrest and those guys, they can do what they want forever because they'll talk with whoever, and they'll it's why it's. I mean, some people are apologists for Delyn and all sorts of guys, and we got into it with Anthony Miller about why he can't talk. But the bottom line is just like if people can talk and actually talk with the people on the other side or different sides or with different beliefs, that's all. It's all we need, It's all we're asking for, And
but for some reason, people start engaging in rhetorical prophylaxis, and they don't even want to talk
Dan,
to certain kinds
there's
of people.
no way Dan McClellan will ever talk with anybody who could actually challenge him. No way.
You've never talked to us. Never in a million years.
No.
Like you don't even have to know
Delyn
that
and
much
Steve Pinecker. Yeah, that one did. That is a good point with that one, because that one, the way they started talking about, and this is one of the things I've always kind of thought Delyn was doing, and those guys is like, strangely enough, they're my fear and belief is between Dan McClellan and if you on that very same episode, Delyn praised Dan McClellan, love that guy. I love that guy. And Steve Pinecker was talking to him about making this new sort of, and we like Steve in general, but like he's talking about making this new one world religion, and Delyn can be part of it, and Dan McClellan can be part of it, and Russell M. Nelson can be part of it, and he can be part of it. And this is what I've been talking about. Like, to me, that's the beast. Like, that's the thing that that's the thing I don't want coming all together in some sort of mega authoritarian, futuristic, post-religious, current religious, Puritanism 2.0 nightmare situation.
The only thing that I wish we all agreed on is that we don't all have to agree all the time. That's tolerance, liberal tolerance. That's my ideal world, is where people disagree all the time and they do so peacefully. But this thing, because I listened to part of your review of Vervaeke, and it's funny because I like how you guys are basically tearing that guy down for I mean, he's full of shit. I got to say at this point, because just that, where it's like, it's just making another church. Yeah. Like, you're trying to make church 2.0 again and again and again and again. Like,
I came into Vervaeke really, really wanting him to be awesome.
So did I. But But part of what I thought it was going to just be like a general way to.
I like that what you guys said. Like you thought it was supposed to be for everyone, but you guys realize you almost need to have a bachelor's degree in philosophy before you can even start to understand it.
Yeah, I listened to a 22-part lecture on the Republic, and then I read the Republic, and I haven't
Hannah Stoddard is easy.
I did not watch. I watched Hannah Stoddard on the Midnight Mormons.
Hannah Stoddard
I didn't
Midnight
watch
Mormons,
Kara.
I was not impressed.
I was
not impressed. But like, so that's funny. It's like, yeah, like how easy it is to take down a religious apologist. Well, just watch how easy it is for us to take down Kara's bullshit. There you go.
Hannah Stoddard seems like she kind of seems like a bit like
I haven't watched any of it. Yeah, I haven't watched any of it.
Hannah Stoddard is a bit crazy in that she is an Orthodox believing Mormon. So as crazy as that is how crazy Hannah Stoddard is.
Yeah, we talked about it a bit at the beginning that like it's good to know that point of view, just to know that rebuttal's out there. So I'm always happy to find out rebuttals that I didn't know were rebuttals. But are they that convincing or not, or interesting? And Kara taking it down. Did you watch the whole thing of that, Troy? Was it worth watching the whole thing? Because I'd probably get frustrated. It'd probably be interesting to see Dan Vogel take it down or something like that, but I don't know if I want to see Kara take it down, because Kara would probably just frustrate me, or something like that. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know if I could sit through that whole entire one, but because but I don't know. I'm worried about. I'm worried about as I've said it a million times, the synthesis. Like these guys, the old joke about like Republicans and Democrats is they aren't really against each other. It's just one's driving the speed limit of what the other one's trying to drive off a cliff.
He said, like, yeah, the left is speeding off of a cliff, and the right is going the speed limit off of the cliff.
And I think
I love that analogy.
Kind of what my ultimate point is, because my parents are the same. My parents are. They're Mormons, and my dad's a stake patriarch, and my mom's believing whatever. But they're going right down the hill of MSNBC, and it's kind of been one of my criticisms of DeLynn is like, what Mormons are you talking about? Like, I'm sure there's some rural Mormons like that, but here in Salt Lake City, they're just going right down the DeLynn path, just driving the speed limit a bit, just totally. And DeLynn, if you listen to DeLynn in that Pinecker episode, I think that he circles back into a type of Christianity. He says he's got some worries about it or whatnot, but he circles back into reconciling the whole entire thing. And Steve Pinecker's really sure he's going to help him do it, and they're going to help do it with Jackson Washburn, and that Russell M. Nielsen in the weird ways on the same page, which is what I, from the very beginning with the Midnight Mormons, what I said with them, or like even Jacob Hansen is like, if these guys are actually like there to stand up against like this, like what I talked about with the Deadwood stuff, if they're actually there to stand up against this all-encompassing globalizing force that's coming around, great. Like I'm all for them and I'm on their side, but I just don't think they are. Like I think they're just there to join up with it, and I think DeLynn's there to join up with it. Like I think they're all just kind of coming together to join up into whatever that thing is, and they're all just going the same direction.
Most of my Mormon relatives are on the left. They vote Democrat. Most of them.
Says Kara did a pretty good job when she stuck to the facts, but then she'd be mean-spirited and polemic. She mentioned Jared's comment about
before or after?
Oh, he mentioned Mormonism.
Oh.
Well, maybe we'll have to check it out.
She probably did that stupid thing where she's like, "You totally missed the point."
It's boring. Nuance Ho has an axe to grind with anything. Yeah, I looked at it and I would have watched it if it was an hour and a half, but I saw it was 3 hours, and I was like, no. But
I watched the whole thing where she talked about the Rod Meldrum stuff, which is like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain to her. Like, lady, if Rod Meldrum is bothering you, the problem is in you. Literally, like, because I mean, yeah, he's got weird ideas. Some of them are objectionable. Get a fucking grip.
Marty and I are talking about doing a podcast on Christian nationalism, and the whole thing is going to just like we said at the beginning, it's true that this stuff is worrisome if it gets into power, but right now it's under the thumb of something that's a bigger, more worrisome power. Kind of how Jonathan Streeter said when he came on a couple weeks ago. He said, "I feel like I was in a boxing match with something, and in the middle of that boxing match, the Hulk jumped in and went, and now I have to deal with the Hulk." And that's what it feels like. I honestly feel like some of my Mormon fights, they're just on pause while we got something else to worry about. But they might join up with the Hulk.
There's this huge overlap between people who think that the Constitution and America's foundations are bad and people who are afraid of Christian nationalists, where it's like, stupid asshole, the answer is the Constitution. Christian nationalists can't get anywhere as long as we have a Constitution. Duh. That's the answer. That's the answer to Christian dominionism. The First Amendment.
I thought of Kara and the Rod Meldrum thing when I was listening to the Sam Harris, Lex Friedman thing, and Sam Harris, he's in this weird deranged place right now, and it's funny to hear him talk because he's talking about platforming people, and he says that there's certain people Lex asked him, would you interview Trump, and he said no. Would you interview Hitler? And he said, well, yeah. Basically, and he's like, there's people he says there's this little middle ground where you can't interview these people, right? Like you can interview people who are explicitly terrible, right? Because you don't have to then go through the preamble to your audience that you don't agree with them, and it's that preamble that they get to. That was a whole problem with the Rod Meldrum thing. Kara and John are panicking, like, oh shit, like we haven't preambled and told these people that we don't agree with what he's saying, but it should be so obvious to their audience that they're interviewing a Mormon guy and they're ex-Mormons. They don't agree with him on this.
So strangely enough,
that they have an issue. This is the part of the issue is that when Rod Meldrum says racist shit, we can respond and say, well, that's racist shit. But John and Kara can't. Because their definition of racism is not a useful definition of racism. It's a racist definition of racism. So they can't attack Rod Meldrum's racism on the level of racism. For them, it's a matter of not being the right kind of racism. And so,
and they got to stop him and tell him to admit that he's racist. Like, tell us you're racist now.
Can't we fight both of them at the same time? I mean, I think you can. I think Uber Mormon can. I think some of those other guys who are on my Verbaki channel, like Christopher from Before the Crow's Nest and Seth can. I have a lot of hope in some of the younger generation come up because it, strangely enough, because you get some sort of stereotype that generation can't talk to people. But even to throw it to Quaco too is there is a difference. There does seem to be some younger generation that actually is more able to just talk with the other guys and not have all this built up baggage that no, we must not talk to them. The simple fact that you had your brother on your channel 4 or 5 times already puts you way ahead of John DeLynn, and that's why I should say we should boost you past John DeLynn. I know you spoke respectful of him on your interview with Marty and all that sorts of stuff, but I just don't respect him. Sorry to say it so bluntly, at all. But anybody who's able to just kind of have general, big, wider conversations or be able to take on. I mean, there shouldn't be any topic that should scare you so hard, and it's partially because he's got enough baggage that he doesn't want anybody poking at him. And I don't know.
John DeLynn has taken himself out of it.
Yeah, the point is they took themselves, and then they started bringing in this other ideology that we're like, wait, what is this ideology you guys are bringing in? So now we gotta,
I guess I just don't have much interest anymore in fighting Mormonism. I have a lot of criticisms of it, but I'm to the point where I can see the type of people that it makes happy. I don't get it. It didn't make me happy at all, but I believe the people who say that they're happy in it. Some of them I don't think maybe they aren't. Maybe they're just lying to themselves or whatever.
I was just saying about how
I'll bring things to people's attention if I think that it will help them. Right? There's a lot of things I tell all the guys at work do this Mormon thing that pisses me off, where they feign humility because humility is the pinnacle virtue in Mormonism, and they try to act really, really humble by being terribly self-deprecating. And all the guys that are saying shit like, oh, my wife married down or whatever. No, she didn't. You're a good guy. Okay. She's a good woman, and you guys married across, and it's great. And so stop trying to be. That's just an example of a criticism of Mormonism that I will level at. So I go for specific criticisms when I'm talking to these people, and I it's only if I think that like you have a problem, and this idea could maybe fix it. I don't think you need to throw away your entire belief system just because of this one tiny little problem.
Yeah.
If it works for you, I don't like
I was saying earlier about, like, I mean, I live in a neighborhood, none of my coworkers, like, I'm basically around no Mormons. And frankly, like, if 25% of my neighbors were Mormon tomorrow, that would be a big improvement in my neighborhood. Like, I'm sure I would see the change. Like, I was asking before, like, would you rather live in a predominantly Mormon neighborhood or a predominantly woke neighborhood? I pick Mormons. Easy peasy. Because for one thing, you can talk to Mormons. You can't talk to the woke. But what is this Twitter Kwaku Desnot drama? I don't think I know about this.
Kwaku's been just going at him. It's kind of like a little bit of a Peterson thing in the sense of like he wants them to stop hiding behind their anonymous names and just lobbing out insults and all that sort of stuff. And I think he did kind of openly dox some of them because of how they've been acting. And the Desnat people can be extreme douches on there. That is absolutely 100% for sure true. Forrest says, this is an honest question point. I feel strongly about the gay issue in the Mormon church, but I hate how it makes people assume I am woke. Sometimes I think I am feeding the beast. Gay people.
I guess what do you mean by the gay issue? Because like
that they're tough on gay people.
You can't be gay and Mormon. You know, like the plan of salvation has no room for a gay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's so. I always find that I find it sad. But my advice to a gay person is just like leave the church.
Yeah, some of my most favorite anti-woke people are gay people. Like I could give you, and I'd probably put like if I made a top 10 list, not even thinking of who is gay or who isn't, 5 of them would be gay guys. There's
a part-timer I work that cracks me up because he's like an older guy and he's from rural Louisiana, and it's just funny because he's gay, but he's like such a not gay. Like every other day he comes to work, he brings a bag from Chick-fil-A. And I even brought up, what's like what happens when they see that? He's like, I don't care. I love Chick-fil-A. Like those guys can go to hell. It's just so funny because like it's in so many ways that like he voted for Trump. He even meant like I voted for Trump the first time, not the second time, but I voted for Trump the first time. Like, holy shit!
The
like,
first
are you
and
allowed
not
into the gay club in the gay world right now?
So he brings up a good point. He's saying I hate that most people assume that I'm woke. And I get that. You got to just understand that there's some people who are very much on edge with this shit. Like
this guy,
there's a lot of people who like throw like every time you see an interracial couple, they'll be like, is that woke? Because like sometimes it is just woke business practice, like throwing an interracial couple in there. But like that doesn't mean that interracial couples are bad. So sometimes people are going to misfire and be like, oh, you think that. The problem with the gay thing is I feel like we've won, like they can get married now. Awesome.
This guy
you're
here,
not going to change Mormonism.
Listen to this guy on Benjamin Boyce. The episode's called Sodding Off with Blokey Blokeberry. This guy's great. He's a British guy, but he has the contention that he says if all of his fellow people hadn't died off from AIDS so much in the 80s, so much of them would have been like Scott Thompson types. If you know Scott Thompson from Kids in the Hall,
love Scott
Thompson. Scott Thompson's just not having the woke stuff at all. And he says most of those guys who died, we would all be like, we didn't fight for this. This isn't what we were doing. Like we're not into all this stuff. And this guy's very against Drag Queen Story Hour and all that sorts of stuff. And this is a great episode. He's a hilarious dude. This guy right here,
gay stand-up comic in Canada in
Barry Wall,
1983. Like, and that's things like I've brought it up before, but it makes me so angry when people talk about Ellen is brave. It's like, you got nothing on Scott Thompson. Like, Scott Thompson went up and did stand-up comedy as a gay guy in the early 80s. Like, he's one of the very first. Like,
and that's what this guy, listen to that episode of that guy, because one of the things he's talking about is like so many of the gay guys at that time who were really kind of like breaking ground. They were absolutely people who would be 100% always open to continuously be in the fight or talking or open to criticism or into literature and not turning down reading or looking into whatever's out there.
Does anybody know where John Waters is on woke?
Oh, he's been both. He's said some stuff one way and both the other way a little bit.
Yeah, because like I mean that's the thing is like I can kind of see that, but like in his core, he's such a
look up
a
Scott...
counterconformist that I can see that. Like I just see John Waters wouldn't be woke just because of how much conformity is involved in being woke, and nonconformity is at the core of everything he does.
Look up Scott Thompson on Tom Segura's podcast. He had a great couple episodes with Tom Segura.
I love Scott Thompson.
But I don't know. As far as that stuff goes, like my dad, who was a bishop, he's a stake patriarch and all that stuff. My mom, his first counselor in his bishopric, his son came out as gay. And I remember when the kid came out as gay, he came out like over the pulpit and all that stuff. And this is around my parents, but this is Salt Lake, because I know there's other places that, I mean, like they say, it's a little bit bishop roulette and all that stuff. But sooner or later, that kid was getting married, and every single one of those counselors were there at the kid's wedding, just there in support and all that sort of stuff. And it's just different times than it used to be. But yeah, I don't know how far to push them to make it go one direction or not, because I think there's some sort of concept that like you kind of got to like leave those societies to work out their pronomian or antinomian behavior on their own, and just like ripping the stuff away is, slippery slopes do tend to be real. And I like what Jared always says about that, is that like just because there is a thing that comes after doesn't mean that you don't let the one that you should have let in. You know what I mean? And
don't avoid a moral imperative just because you're afraid of what follows, but be aware of what follows.
But yeah, Josh Slocum, what's her name? The fake account on what's his name?
Titania McGrath.
Billboard Chris. There's
These
a
are
bunch
all
of them.
Anti-woke gay
people. Yeah. Douglas Murray, he's killer. Douglas Murray is killer.
Douglas Murray is gay?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Married with kids, huh?
Go figure.
His profile picture is him and his husband with kids.
Lady Maga's cool. Yeah, Marty got to interview Lady Maga. Lady Maga's hilarious. Man, some
Lady
people are being
Maga
dickheads to Lady Maga on but I really like Lady Maga. But I mean, I'm 1,000,000% the same. Like I'm pro gay, I'm pro trans, I'm pro all that stuff. Just
honestly, like
just not
I am annoyed
on kids. And
yeah, I am annoyed by the whole drag queen story
Dave
hour
Rubin.
because it's ruining legitimate drag queenery. Because when it's good, it's good. It's entertaining. It's impressive.
Dude,
like,
I went
some
to
of those queens are really talented. They work really hard on their craft, and they put on a real performance. But turning it into a fucking tool for social change is ripping the guts out of it.
I went to that Cirque du Soleil. There's like a sexy Cirque du Soleil, and half of that sexy Cirque du Soleil had all this gender bending stuff in it. But it was for adults. And then that's exactly where that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like in the situation where you're performing that stuff, and there's even like amazing talent inside of what they're performing. In
can like when is Bordello Story Hour coming? Is that coming? How about stripper? How about stripper story hour? Is that on its way? Like,
yeah, see, that's kind of the problem. This whole drag queen story hour thing picked up steam when like that one drag queen a couple years back was doing a story hour and not wearing underwear and like flashed his balls at a bunch of kids, and like that's the thing people have a problem with it. And I don't really have it. And like a lot of the people on the right are maybe going a little bit too far on this, but like I wouldn't have cared if it was Mrs. Doubtfire reading books to kids. I probably would have been like, that's okay, whatever, I don't care. Like I've never been to a drag show, but I'm not against it. Do what you want and leave me alone.
I was saying like the short. It was about 10 years ago that I went to a drag show. I was at a friend's house. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I got no plans." She's like, "Want to go to a drag show?" And I'm like, "I've never been. I'll go." And I liked it. I enjoyed it. And in fact, I even thought about like, do these guys need a writer? Because one thing I didn't know is how much comedy there was. You know, and there was a whole theme. And I even thought because during the show in my head, I was writing bits for them. Like, oh, I would have done this. I would have done that, you know? But then I'm like, this isn't my scene. I'll leave it alone. But
Flip Forever was a downtown Salt Lake hipster fixture, and he knew everybody downtown Salt Lake and all the different hippies and hipsters and all that sort of stuff, and ran like a Sunday get together of a bunch of hippie types. And
I brought it up before, but right now I am left of Bill Clinton in 1995. Yeah, like that, and I haven't moved since then.
Yeah, and the way I always put it, to put it in shorthand if people understand, is like we're basically just local versions of James Lindsay and Bogosian, and they're guys who are liberal guys all the way down, kind of just general center left, center right, classic liberals who kind of lived through watching stuff go haywire, and so some of this is just philosophizing, like, why did it go haywire, and where do we got to like slow down with the Chesterton's fence, because maybe we're trying to rip stuff away from people too fast or something, and that's really it. But maybe we're wrong about that too, you know. But part of it is just we got to watch firsthand a bunch of people turn into hand banana, and
I mean John Larson. We watched John Larson go.
Lindsay, and Lindsay's actually talked to me. She's seen some of this, and she's talked to me and shot out some apologies just for how stuff got so like haywire. Although Flip's still waiting for his.
You're missing one, Lindsay.
But
I got the receipts. You owe me.
And but beyond that, it was like the new atheist scene. Like that new atheist scene went nuts. It went nutso, and that's just half of like figuring out how do you avoid that stuff from happening, because it's all kind of like fed into all this, and that's it. But do we have the answers? I don't got no answers. That's one of the things. Like we're sitting here kind of aware that we don't have any answers, and if we're just self-parking, we can't give answers. And I'm holding you, Forrest, to come up with answers that I don't got.
You might not be able to give answers, but like I have no biases because every opinion of mine is supported 100% by the data. Why don't you be like me? I gotta get out of here. I gotta wake up at 3:30.
Yeah, I gotta still walk this pooch who's going bananas right here.
So wait, so that's Jared is literally powered by nothing but radioactivity.
Yeah, I feel bad keeping you up late if all you're doing.
So you're cheating because you just stand a little closer to the reactor, and that charges you up for another day.
It's not bad. It's really not bad. You'd think it would be, and I get it, but it's fine.
Yeah, we don't have answers, but we can still criticize bad ideas. But that's a part of the deal of the whole entire thing, is like critical theory. The whole concept of it coming out of the Frankfurt School was they were so aware of this that they came up with the theory that said, oh, if we just criticize, we can criticize to the utopia. Criticize, and then utopia happens. And I think obviously that's like a bad way of doing it, because then the criticism kind of starts getting the real definition of woke that we started out with is your criticism's getting overly intense and ridiculous. You know, like that's also one of the beliefs of like most of like that Marxism or the neo-Marxism of it is criticize, negate the Hegelian thing. Utopia happens, the end state, we make it. And there's a lot of people, especially like on that dissident right, or some other people who are saying slow your roll on this religious side, because they posit something, and even if they're wrong, they still posited something, and that positive something constructed something that's very hard to reconstruct. And so it's like the G.K. Chesterton's fence things, like be careful what got constructed, what fences got put up. Doesn't mean you can't change the fences, doesn't mean you can't change it, but be careful. That's we'll use a Christ imagery, because some of the Christ imagery, the concept of it is the one who can change the laws is the one who loves the Father, not the one who hates the Father and thinks he's a stupid shithead idiot who needs to be taken down and replaced and reconstructed and what's the words that they use? Not the deconstruction, the dismantled. You got to dismantle the Father because he was always evil. Now he's the one who says, they tried their best and did pretty good, and I understand what they're getting at. And let's see if we can make this better.
Remember that time when the Soviet Union tried to deconstruct traditional Afghan society in the 80s?
I remember when the U.S. did it.
And then there was a Taliban. And then the United States spent 20 years trying to deconstruct traditional society in Afghanistan. And how'd that go?
I don't see them being the ultimate
best
skeptics, but people who have the answers. But that's because they always fail. They fail at what they claim.
Well, they're not skeptics.
Yeah, they fail at what they claim their theory is. They don't hold to it. Because even like all the postmodernism, we can use postmodernism to deconstruct all their stuff, and it's actually useful to do that, and that's actually what a lot of the dissident right people do. And we can use their critical theory to turn it back on them. I mean, it's the acid without a container. You can turn it back on anybody. But that's the deal, is like the criticism we have of Delenn, Marty from the start said to us is like, but look at you, we can criticize you too. And that's the answer to everything. It's like, yes, you can criticize, Yeah. Can you posit the positive thing? Or if there is some positive thing out there, should you be careful with it and look to change it like a little bit more slowly, or try to understand a little bit better about why it came about?
I feel like all I'm trying to say to people is just don't tear everything down. Okay. Wait a second, because one of the best cell phones I've ever seen of deconstructionism is one of our friends, my wife's friend, who left the church and became hyper feminist. She was trying to explain feminism to me and why I should also be a feminist. And she said she was using the example, and I'm sure she read this in some stupid ass book, of the road system in London, I think is what she was using. I don't know. But anyway, it was built around like horses and buggies. And then eventually we got cars. And now that we got cars, the road system is too narrow for the cars. And so what we need to do is like, don't continue driving those cars on a road system not built for them. You have to tear down the whole thing and build it back up, built for cars. And I'm like, that's spoken like a true American who has never been to another country.
Yeah, that's not how that went.
Other countries, like, she must have heard this analogy from somewhere stupid. But anyway, like, even if that were the case, that they were built for horse and buggies and now they're pretty narrow for cars, like, do you not understand what it would take to change it? Like, you're going to have to tear down buildings for that.
Yeah.
You're basically going to have to level your entire city. And she didn't realize that she gave the perfect analogy against deconstructionism, like just pure.
But if you look at it, what the World Economic Forum guys are all talking about is the ultimate version of all of it too. It's like we got to dismantle even our pay systems, our money system, to redo it and make it a better, newer future for the new industrial revolution.
They got Sri Lanka. They implemented their plan.
Stuff's going crazy in Holland right now.
That whole thing. Well, I guess there's good news.
If it doesn't like repeat the stuff with the kulaks, the repeating the stuff with the kulaks and repeating the stuff with the Holodomor. Can we ever tear down anything? Sure. But I think the whole concept of Chesterton's fence is you don't tear down the fence until you know why the fence was there.
Yeah.
And then if you know why the fence is there and you know for sure it doesn't need to be there, then you tear it down. But of course, like, who's the one to do it or not? Because if you look at what the whole entire centralized planners of this world, most centralized planners are people who think they have the answers for that stuff. What's going on with all these banks right now are centralized planners who think that they could adjust and change and fix things, and they can't.
Yeah.
And it's that point of, like, Jordan Peterson made it once when he was talking about we're monkeys with a wrench and the systems we're trying to fix are an Apache helicopter. And so we can go say, "Oh, I can fix this thing," and you take the wrench and you just go bonk, and you didn't fix it, But we handicap ourselves from being able to criticize bad ideas. But I think all we do is kind of criticize Delenn. Those guys we did this whole episode was criticizing Dan and all that sorts of stuff. But I mean, we've been down the roads of criticizing the Mormons and all that sorts of deal. But Marty's criticism of us 100% holds up to me. Is like, I'm a constant like, well, one of the reasons I'm doing that Vervaeke thing is like, let's look at something that can maybe be constructive, and still just ends up being criticism. And we realize that everything is just kind of snarky criticism, which is us Gen X douchebags who all we did ever is sneer at stuff and do heroin and complain and come up with grunge music and be pieces of shit. That's the complaint of the Gen X generation. We were just.
What's
grunge.
The difference between tearing down Mormonism and tearing down wokeism? Well, there's a few big differences. Is that
wokeism is a
Mormonism cops to being a religion. Wokeism pretends to be fact-based. The other thing is that voluntarism is built into Mormonism. It is anathema to wokeism.
When we conflate wokeism to a religion, I don't think.
Well, no, we're not conflating. That's not a conflation.
That's a religion.
That's a religion. That's the thing. But that's the difference. Like, why do I prefer Mormon religion to woke religion? That's just two reasons I just gave. Mormonism, cops to being a religion ultimately, and thus, and Mormonism upholds the Bill of Rights as being a good thing, and it's built into the Bill of Rights that the church has to honor the separation of church and state. Wokeism has none of that.
It confines itself to itself, right?
Yeah.
The church will teach things that I don't agree with about, like, they'll teach that gay marriage is a sin or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't agree with that. I don't think being in a gay marriage is a sin, but they do it in their own place, right? They don't try to send it to these like corporate and sure, they did the Prop 8 stuff, and I don't like that they donated money to Prop 8, but they're not doing that right now, and I'm glad they're not doing it right now. If they do it again, I'll tell them to fuck off.
But it's built into Mormonism that whether or not you're Mormon is up to you. That's fundamental to the Mormon faith, is that it's up to you. Wokeism doesn't have that. And the other thing I've brought up so many times, because, like, do Mormons do a lot of stupid, shitty, hypocritical shit? Yep. But you can always throw their dumb scriptures into their face. The Mormon God commands them to love their enemies. And you can always just throw that in your face. And a lot of them do, God damn it. A lot of the Mormons really work hard on that love your enemies thing. Wokeism has no such injunction.
The Chesterton fence concept applied to wokeism is the concept of it's what irritates me about postmodernism. The same thing is what irritates me about wokeism, which is a modern day thing that uses postmodernism, is that when it's true, and when it's not. Like, the second part of that is what they don't have. Like, there's all sorts of times where, like, Foucault, you can totally see what Foucault was saying about, like, some institution being bullshit about its science and turning its science into just biases and corporate interest and that sort of thing. Foucault's right about that. But sometimes science is just science. So, but Foucault would never give in to saying that, no, sometimes science is just science. It's all 100% just bias enforced. And so, like, that extremeness, it's the same thing with the critical race theory, is that if we can find evidence, which they've theorized away why evidence is bad.
Actually,
evidence is
evil.
Racism. Evidence is rhetorical prophylaxis. If evidence is there that there was racism, there's a racism, and it can even be systemic. I mean, it's even written into the law, like with the spare impact and all that sorts of stuff. You can find that stuff out with actual statistics that aren't just the univariate things and stuff. And all of the stuff that it pretends to do was already there in liberalism, is the deal. It's just that they've went and gone all the way with it, or pushed it so far because they want to maintain certain types of what, James Lindsay pointed out, says, like, it's a continuation of making sure affirmative action keeps coming through, or the payments keep coming through and that sort of stuff. But I'd also recommend James Lindsay's descriptions on how wokeism is a religion, and it falls under every piece of religion on how it should be defined that way under the Constitution. Right. And if you could put it that way, so then it would have to be kept out of schools the same way other religions kept out of school. You can learn about it, but you can't learn it as a truth. You can't learn it as an unchallengeable truth claim on the world. But John McWhorter also has, like, the catechisms of Kendi and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of different people who've gone into detail about how it fits every piece.
It might sound like a gross oversimplification, but it is not. Wokeism is a Gnostic faith. Wokeism, you can draw the line straight back to the Gnostics of the first few millennia, or first few centuries and before. Like, literally, it's a Gnostic faith.
What are we providing in place of wokeism? We're saying it right now.
Classical liberal values.
It was already there. It was already there all along. You guys
this is the thing that's invading. Like,
it's invading. It's a parasite on top of it.
Yeah.
It's a parasite on top of it. You have to clean it up. You have a republic if you can keep it. As Jefferson said, you're supposed to clean it up. You're supposed to clean it up all the time and reel back laws that are overstated laws. Or if people are getting, it's almost kind of like an immune system. Sometimes it can get sick. Sometimes it can get hyper autoimmune, and it's like an autoimmune disorder. We're reeling back to autoimmune disorder just to back to basic liberalism. Liberalism was good. And some of the first bits of wokeism, all I wanted to explain to people, because people didn't read it, and I was trying to get people to read it and say it claims itself that it's illiberal. And so many of the people who were getting into it were self-proclaimed liberals. You say, do you see that you are joining into something that is different than what you claim to be?
Yeah. Do you mean like how many ordinary gay men buy into queer theory, not knowing that queer theory hates gay men and thinks that they are as bad as anybody can be?
So much of what it is with all of it,
they are just gay.
Just like you do with like Mormons or whatever. Like read this stuff. Read where it talks about. Read where it talks about the flaming sword and all that sort of stuff. We're just doing the same thing with wokeism. Read where it talks about that it's illiberal and doesn't believe in the Constitution and doesn't. Can I provide liberal values instead of Mormonism? But we're not saying provide Mormonism. There's a bunch of Mormons are liberals, but I'm not. All I'm saying was Mormons is that Mormonism. So many Mormons leave Mormonism, and I had some other guy saying this to me just this week, and more than a few people see it. The next step always seems to be just to fall into Delinite wokeism, and that's what if we somehow curb that off, I wouldn't care anymore.
So Forrest says, yes, Flip. So why do you feel okay attacking the faith of wokeism, but not the faith of Mormonism? I don't know how to catch you up on 20 years of me shitting on.
He did tonight several times.
I have talked so many people out of the church. I'm very good at it.
But you got strangled once by one guy, right?
A guy tried to choke me. In fact, it was a faithful gay Mormon, and I was trying to tell him that there's a place for you in the world, and he got mad at me.
Jeez.
Attacking Mormonism is old. That's part of it. Like I don't do it so much anymore because, frankly, like the job is done.
But
it feels kind of like Mormonism lines up more closely with liberal values than the woke stuff does. Like, right? Because I don't know. I can count very few ways where, because most of what liberal values are is just that, like, okay, you can do your thing. And
if there's
they do their thing, and as soon as they stop letting me do my thing, as soon as they start saying, you know what, we should.
They're more pluralistic. They were at times in their past, but the 90s Mormonism, they were more pluralistic than wokeism.
20 years ago, there's an episode of South Park where they talked about tolerance, and it was funny because, like, without saying it directly, they were getting at the leftist woke hijacking of the word tolerance and what it means tolerance. Because like I remember it's like Stan or Color, somebody says tolerance doesn't mean you have to like it. It just means you have to tolerate it. You know, that's the point of liberal tolerance. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like that people don't like it. You just have to follow the rules and get along in society. It's okay to not like somebody, but you have to let them go and do their thing anyway, as long as it's not imposing. And that's the thing. It's like when the church oversteps the First Amendment and imposes themselves, you better watch me shit on them. I go crazy on that. I've brought it up many times before about how one of my major little faith moments was when I was a missionary in California during Prop 22, which was the predecessor to Prop 8. And we showed up at the church to get something out of the library or something on a Saturday. And the whole elders quorum was loading signs on 22 signs out of the ward house and into the cars. And I'm like, damn it, I go around telling people that the church isn't involved in politics and you assholes are doing this now, you know?
Yeah. But there's a level too, like if people aren't woke or stuff like I'm not all over your channel shitting on your stuff, right, Forrest? And I don't go to Dan Vogel's channel and shit on his stuff. And I don't go to like any channel if they're just kind of keeping it. But there was a moment, and we've talked about the moment where Lindsey Hansen and John DeLynn were talking about truth claims of the church. And they cut it all off. And you go listen to Kate Kelly on the Midnight Mormons, and they talk about that's a male way of thinking to even talk about stuff not being true or it being that way. You have to switch it all over into this type of moralistic deconstruction of the church. It can't just be like examining truth claims and looking at all that stuff. And we've talked in the past when that moment came, because they had some CES person who answered the CES letters, and they were listening to it, and they were about to listen to it, and it got derailed by woke people who said we can't discuss the church this way anymore. It's not about what's true or not true, or what happened in history or didn't happen in history. It's about people's feelings. And that was one of the moments like, what the hell am I in, and what's all this thing doing right here?
Like,
but
slightly related.
I don't go like if people are just sticking to facts or talking about that sorts of stuff. Like I don't go trying to dunk on their channels or anything like that. We dunk on when they kind of get woke. But Flip and I, the very first podcast we recorded, which we never put up, and it was like a year before this whole thing. You remember what we did? We made a whole Mark Hoffman video. Do you remember that?
I don't.
You don't? We made an entire video and talking about Mark Hoffman and the whole history of that. And then it was before that Jared Hess made the video, the Netflix video of it.
Oh.
I have it saved somewhere. We made an entire Mark Hoffman thing, and then I just never put it out.
No recollection of this.
I tried to afterwards make a kind of Ken Burns style documentary of it. And I overbit my talent because I'm not good at that stuff yet or anything. And it took too long, and then I didn't put it out. But But whatever. Everybody else is doing a good enough job. And well, I mean, kind of one of our things about the Lynn is like, he's going over the Kinderhook plates again this week or something like that. And
yeah,
it's all that's out there. Man. That's out there. But I mean, your videos are good because they're shorter and they do better and stuff like that. Like make it more interesting.
Yeah, because part of the problem is like we talked about all before is that like the 2005 atheism, like first off, like that's been totally superseded by the new conversation, but also like I just kind of feel like the conversation has been had. Like I mean, I know there's always new people, and it's good that there's always new people going over this stuff, but like I do not need another primer on logical fallacies. I just don't.
But if there's two choices, and that's a false choice, but if the two choices are Mormon or Delinite, I choose people be Mormon for my purposes.
But what would make a better civilization if everyone was Mormon or everyone was woke? Mormons.
But I would love a third way, and if you figure it out and if you do it, I'm like I've said a million times, I'm on board if you're doing it. 100%. And
I'm not against you trying. 4.5 hours, so I gotta
drink the coffee. I gotta go too.
Charlie's going when we ran out of things to talk about.
Yeah, that always happens. Thanks for chilling, talking, everybody.
Talk to you later, Forrest.
Hey, McClellan.